board meeting for June 8th, 2020. Before we say the pledge, I'd like for us to just observe a moment of silence, if you would. Join all of us in remembering George Floyd and his family and everyone who is suffering through this difficult time. All right, thank you very much. Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Terry. That up this time. All right. Time to approve the agenda for this evening. Is there a motion to approve this evening's agenda?
Mr. Moore, I'd like to remove something from the consent agenda. And is this the time to do that, or do I need to wait?
I think we already moved it.
Oh, you did move it?
Yeah.
Okay. Then I'll stand down.
Did we move it?
Let's take a look and make sure. Which one is it, Mr. Toady?
The budget amendments.
Budget amendments.
I can see here, or I'm looking at, I still see it in consent at 10.9, 2019-2020 budget amendments. It's still there?
Well, yeah. Then I would like to move it somewhere else outside.
We'll just move it to new business.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or changes to the agenda? Was there a motion and a second?
No. Mr. President, I move that the board approve the June 8, 2020 agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Salzman.
Second.
In a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed say no. All right. Report of board members. Anyone have anything they would like to report?
I'd just like to say some of us board members were able to join with the administration in writing notes to some of our 2020 grads, and so that was kind of fun to be able to encourage them and do that. So thanks for the offering to let us do that.
I would just add that I participated too, and I really think whoever thought of that idea is to be commended. I thought it was a great idea. The only worry I have is that the kids who receive my cards may not be able to read my writing.
I did hear that Melissa Tevenkamp, one of our good friends, received yours, and they really liked it, but the mom had to read it to him because he couldn't read cursive.
Oh.
Any other board members have anything they would like to report?
I do.
Ms. Tittle.
Last week I attended on Zoom the CSDG KC, Consolidated School Districts of Greater Kansas City Zoom meeting. Brian Huff and I did, and it was the annual meeting. And just FYI, the new president of that organization is Dan Clemens, the superintendent in North Kansas City. And they gave a summary of the latest legislative session, which I'm sure Dr. Markley will talk about tonight too. And the June 19th MSBA leadership meeting and delegate assembly will be on Zoom. And so I plan on attending that, and there'll be a practice next week. So they're really trying to make it work well, I think. And I wanted to say yay for Norfleet teachers who drove through the neighborhood on the last day of school, May 20th. That was just wonderful. It was just as much fun or more than the drive through they did in March. I mean, I know many schools have done that, and it's just, it is exciting to see, you know, wave at the teachers. They'll have their dogs in the car, and it's just really fun. It was a great idea. So thank you.
Yes, those parades were a great idea. Very enjoyable. Anyone else have anything?
Is your wife home, Mr. Moore?
You can tell, huh? All right, sorry. Superintendent highlights, and I'll put myself on mute for a minute.
Okay, good evening, everyone. It's good to see everybody. We've got quite a few items we want to discuss under the report of the superintendent, so I want to stick to the one item I have here in the highlights. 5.2, the district response to recent events, and I don't know if you can click on that, or you have that in front of you. With the recent events and the protests and the things that are going on around us, we have been working on a district response to our community. And over the weekend, I know we were contacted by RENEA if we were going to put out a message, and our plan was to do that, but we wanted to make sure that was coming from all of us in the district, including this Board of Education, before we move forward with that. And that you have that there in front of you. That's a draft that we have, and I thought we could take this time to discuss the way that looks. If you wanted to change that at all, if you wanted to approve sending this out, we could do so as soon as that's approved by the board. So with that said, I'll let the board go ahead and start having that discussion.
If anyone has any comments, they can go ahead and make them. Everybody may not have had a chance to see that yet, so they may want to still add some later. And after any board members are finished speaking, I think we do have one audience member who wants to address us on this issue.
Dr. Markley, was the letter supposed to open up on our screen? Because it didn't on mine.
If you click on if you're in the board agenda, Terry, if you have that pulled up where you've logged in, it should click up as any attachment would if we were actually in the boardroom.
Okay, but when I click on it, it doesn't show up.
Okay. Is anyone else having that trouble?
Yeah, I'm having the
Yes.
same problem.
I'd like to see it.
There it is.
Yeah,
Now.
thank
There
you.
it is. There it is.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry.
Everybody can see it now. I think it's a really good statement.
Mm-hmm. Now, this would go out as, how would this go out?
It would go out on our district Facebook page, all the different forms of communication that we have on our website.
Okay.
And a message from the district, not from district administration, not just the Board of Education, but all of us on a united front.
Okay.
And including any comments that we have from some of the patrons that are on here tonight that wish to speak.
Marie Tracy, president of Raytown NEA, had mentioned that she wanted to speak about this.
Yes, I'm here.
All right, great. Thank you.
All right. Thank you to the board. Thank you, Dr. Markley. We appreciate that you all listened to us and took very quick action when we reached out on behalf of Raytown NEA. And we are proud to be part of this district that does address issues of racial justice and has been doing so for a long time. I think making a statement to our community will only affirm that even more. And I haven't had a chance to really dive into what you've shared here, but what I can see looks really strong. And thank you from Raytown NEA.
Thank you very much for those words of support. Appreciate that. You know, I'm just going to add one short personal note. I know my kids are better for having gone to school here in this district in regards to everything that's going on. So I'm very appreciative of that. Anyone else have anything? Dr. Markley, did you want us to actually make a motion on this to approve?
I think it would show the community that the board supports, and we know you support what this letter has to say because you've done it by your actions in the past. But I think it would be something that just another layer of support from the board that this is how we feel in our community. This is how we support our students and our families. And I think it's just something that that people need to see again and again from all of us.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I move that the board approve the district statement as presented.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any other comments? All right, let's vote on that motion. Mr. Landers,
Yes.
Ms. Plank,
Yes.
Ms. Salisbury,
Yes.
Mr. Burton,
Yes.
Mr. Toady. You're on mute. You're on mute still, Rick.
That was an aye.
Got you, Rick. Ms. Tittle,
Yes.
and I vote yes. All right, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. That's all I have in that section.
We'll make any final edits and issue that as soon as possible. All right, Dicey Brooke, you're on with us. Are you going to share anything on Did You Know?
Yes, I'm going to share Did You Know? It should be in the agenda as an attachment as well.
Yes.
Pull up. So we just wanted to point out a couple of highlights that have happened throughout the month of May. So first we have our Grow Your Own recipients. So this is our cohort of students that are going into the field of education, and then we'll hopefully come back and teach. They will come back and teach with us as part of their scholarship requirement. So we have Raytown High students Leslie Rodriguez and Alicia Vaughn, and Raytown South High students Shelby Hill and Catherine Miller. Rodriguez plans to go into early childhood education at Rockhurst, Vaughn elementary education at MCC, and then go on to Park University. Hill, special education at University of Central Missouri. And then Miller plans to start at MCC and then also move on to the University of Central Missouri. So congratulations to those for recipients. I did want to include Chef on here. We got a chance to surprise him a few weeks back, letting him know that he's the Raytown Teacher of the Year, and he'll go on to compete at the regional level and state level then hopefully after that. So I did think this total was great. Chef, I kind of helped add it up and Chef verified, but you'll see that over $2 million in scholarship funds there that since Chef has been leading the program. So I thought that was super important to point out. And then we have Justice Thompson, who she placed first in the state FBLA competition that was held virtually. So that was a difficult element there, and qualified for nationals. And she's going to go ahead and compete virtually June 29th through July 2nd. So we wish her lots of luck. And that's a Raytown South High student. And then Laurel Hills, you mentioned the North Fleet Parade. Laurel Hills, we highlighted their parade on the district Facebook page. And what I thought was really great is a lot of the parents sent in photos to the teachers, just showing their kiddos' faces when the teachers drove by. So you'll see several of those photos on the district Facebook page of the parents taking pictures of the teachers of the parade going by. So lots of great photos there. And then the mascot got in on the fun. So I wanted to be sure to include that. And then Raytown High School Theater Program recently received 2 Cappies Awards. One to Kylie Butler and Mez Hall for their makeup design, and then Shelly Ferbert for her set design. And I included some of those pictures. You'll have to go on the district Facebook page and see their work. So Miss Colster, program director, theater program director at Raytown High School, provided some of photos of their actual work that they received the awards for. So that was really great to see. And they actually received 16 nominations. That's the most they've ever received as part of the Cappies program, which is a completely student-led theater awards program. So that is Did You Know for this month.
All right, great. Thank you, Brooke. Anybody have any other questions or comments? I don't believe we had anyone else who had requested to speak tonight. All right, report of superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Before I forget, you asked the question, whose idea was that for the cards for the seniors? That would be Dr. Moore, and I don't see him on here. He wouldn't want me saying that, and since he's not here, he doesn't get to hear that. But he came up with that idea, and it was a great idea, and everybody embraced it. And it was a neat thing to do for our kids. And I've heard numerous comments and compliments on the signs around town, and complimenting, our kids and their accomplishments. So we're very pleased with that. And we're going to talk a little bit how we're going to honor them again here in just a moment. Summer school update. If summer school was to open next Monday, under the current county restrictions, we would not be allowed to have summer school physically because we are still in phase 2 of the county reopening process. Now, we anticipate within the next 10 to say 20 days prior to July 1 that Jackson County will move into phase 3, which will fit the plan that we've come up with having a limited summer school for grades K through 5, and considering the number of students that we can have on a bus and in a classroom and be able to social distance in accordance with the guidelines, because those don't go away until phase 4. I have Dr. Mixon here on the line, and she's going to give just a quick update of the numbers that we have for summer school virtually this month, and we'll also be having a virtual summer school for secondary students next month, but she can give you the numbers of students that we have ready to go for our physical summer school July 6th. Dr. Mixon, are you out there?
She's here. Melissa's going to move her over to be a panelist so she can talk, so it might just take a second.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Rob.
On her way in, and so is Dr. Moore. He was as an attendee, so he's now a panelist as well.
Thank you very much. I was muted. Thank you, Dr. Markley.
You're welcome, sir.
Good evening, everyone. Just an update to kind of let you know what some numbers are with summer school. We currently have 774 students, high school students, enrolled for our July session. So that will be starting July 6th, and we'll be using Launch, which is the platform out of Springfield. So a lot of that is first-time credit. There will be some recovery credit as well for that. We have 464 students enrolled for middle school, and they will also be using Launch, and that will be ELA, or English Language Arts and Math. They'll only be taking those 2 courses if they're doing middle school, summer school this year. And for our elementary July, we currently have 820 students enrolled. But as Dr. Markley said, we're going to do class sizes of around 10. So because of that, we do have about 246 families at this time that would be on a wait list. So we will be getting communication out to them soon, quickly this week, so they can make other plans. That is provided that some of the restrictions are lifted and we can offer summer school in July. For June, we have currently 179 students taking classes right now this month. Any questions about summer school? We're doing lots of planning to make sure that the students can socially distance in the classroom, on the school buses, from all points of their day, from the beginning of the day till the end of the day. So planning around lunches and recess and all of those different things. So trying to make sure that we have a good solid plan that will be safe and still be able to instruct students in July.
Has the county or anything indicated when they might make a decision on opening up more? Is it just, we're just waiting?
Well, the phases are in cycles. They have the cycles, they're timing them with the 14 to 28 day time frame. Whereas if you might have the symptoms or you have tested positive, you're quarantined for 14 days. That seems to be the pattern they're following. So we anticipate June the 15th to be the first of any news we might get since the last update, which was on or near June 1st. Also with summer school, if we can have summer school, it will give us a good opportunity to see how we react in this current environment as far as our transportation, our sanitization, after kids have been in the classrooms, on the buses, eating meals, etc. It'll be a good test run for us on a much smaller scale. But that's where we're at with the county so far, Ms. Blank. Now, you got to understand the county, as we talk about graduation here in just a moment, the county and cities kind of conflict a little bit with what their restrictions are and who has the power to enforce those restrictions. Okay, any other questions on the summer school update? All right, virtual learning plan. Last month, we had kind of dipped our toes in the water a little bit of where we were headed and talking about what we possibly could do in the fall, where we're going to be or what we're going to be allowed to do. There were some good feedback from the board. Mr. Tody asked us to bring something to the table so we can start discussing that. And I believe Dr. Huff is ready to do that this evening. Dr. Huff, are you there?
I am here. Good evening, everybody. All right, so you've got 3 documents attached to this agenda item, and I'll walk through the 3 of them. And just know that our overarching plan is that we want to be able to offer an outstanding education to our kids no matter what the circumstances are in the fall. And where we only had a couple days to prepare, in the spring or the fall, we only had a couple days in the spring to prepare for what happened to us in March. But we've got a lot of time to prepare this time, and so we have a good chance to be able to do something quite special when the fall comes. So there's an overview, and I'll start off with that document. It's titled Virtual Learning Plan and 2020-2021. And I'm not going to read it, but I'll go over the basic tenets of it. First off, the document starts off with 3 assumptions and 1 assertion. And so this is really what we're working with. We don't have a complete knowledge of everything that's going to happen. We do have some assumptions about what we have to work with. Our first assumption is that more families are going to seek virtual instruction than have in the past. And we anticipate that 5 to 10% of our families will make this choice to seek after virtual instruction. We are seeing some surrounding districts have more families, we believe, seek after this sort of alternative instructional environment. We don't believe that our families will have it in quite the number that Blue Springs and Lee Summit are going to see. We'll probably be a little more similar to what Hickman Mills and Center are seeing, but we anticipate a 5 to 10%. Now our plan, though, can handle, and we are planning for as much as 30% to make that choice. And we'll be able to react even if this number goes up quite a bit higher than we're anticipating it will. We got a survey that went out today that's going to seek to answer that question a little bit better, so we'll have a better idea. Assumption 2, families will seek virtual instruction with outside vendors if we don't have a good product. And there are vendors that are actively courting families right now. And we feel that we need to have a product that is superior in the eyes of our families than these outside vendors. The third assumption is that it's very likely that we will have some sort of restrictions due to COVID-19 in August. It might be distancing restrictions, capacity restrictions, certain spaces that can't be used as we normally would, but we assume that there will be some sort of restrictions still in place when August rolls around. And the one assertion that we have is that whatever we do, it's got to be good for everybody. And so that comes back to the guaranteed and viable curriculum. Guaranteed curriculum meaning that we serve everybody, that 100% of our students have 100% access to 100% of the curriculum 100% of the time. Viability, meaning that we can actually do this, that whatever curriculum we put in place can be taught in a virtual setting or can be taught in the regular education environment. So guaranteed and viable are very, very important. We're looking at approaching this from two different lenses or two different avenues. We are fairly certain, I mean, obviously we could have a regular environment where everybody's in class and everything's back to normal in August. That'd be lovely. But we are planning for either a blended learning environment or a 100% virtual learning environment. Very likely we'll be looking at the blended learning environment. The blended learning environment, we're looking at having either 50% capacity where a student comes to class every other day, or 20% capacity where a student comes to class every 5th day. And then when you're not in class, you're at home learning virtually, and the teacher is able to, the student's able to participate with the class through the virtual setting while the rest of the kids who are at the school are actually in the class environment. And so I went through some scenarios there about what that looks like. We could even decide that maybe some students need to be in school every day. We do have some students who, because of maybe their learning disability or maybe because of their economic environment at home, or maybe because of their English language learning abilities, they might need to be in school every day. And so that we have the capacity to also do that, have some kids in school every day, some kids in school some days. And we'll continue to flesh that out. The other option is a completely virtual learning environment where the students are at home every day. Teachers are teaching them virtually, much as we did for the last 2 months of school. And one of the things we need to work on is marketing, is the last part of that document. And that is that, you know, the folks who are offering this, they are, you know, the outside vendors that are offering virtual education are marketing hard, and we need to market what's better about what we are offering. And you know, that includes things like that our classes are mirroring what's being taught in the building. So if you're taking 6th grade math virtually, it is the same as the 6th grade math that's being taught in the classroom. And so a student can make that easy transition back and forth. If they are home for a month and then decide they want to come into school, it's easy to make that transition back into school. They'll be taught by certified instructors. They'll be taught by the same teachers that are teaching the in-class classes. And we're going to provide technology. We're going to provide a computer. We've got Wi-Fi hotspots that we're going to provide as needed as well. And we also, our students can still participate in extracurricular activities. And one of the things I didn't put on there is that there's also the personal touch. That, you know, there's something special about still being connected with your local school. And you know that the folks that are connected with you care about you. And that means a great deal. That means a great deal. And so we'll work hard to market that. Any questions or thoughts about that plan? I've got a couple of the documents to walk you through. But any questions about our assertions and assumptions and that sort of thing?
Dr. Huff, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
You know, the success of this plan is probably partially dependent upon the technical skill set of the family members and the students. And we got 8,500 kids. How are we, I don't worry about the top 1,000. I worry about the 1,000, 0 to 1,000. How will we be able to quickly get those people the support, those kids and the families the support to really be effective in the virtual learning world?
All right. So what you're getting at is again, you know, the assertion that we have is that 100% of the students have access. And you're right. If our goal is 90%, that's a fairly easy target. It's the last 10%. It takes a lot of doing. And you know, just as an example, our SPED department is going to be working all summer long in determining what that means for each and every student. Every single student that has an IEP, they are getting modification to their plan that is talking specifically about what they need to be able to access. We plan on creating some videos for parents as well. So simple things like how to know if your student is completing work on Google Classroom, how the simple operation, the basic operation of Zoom, those sorts of things. We'll put some videos together over the summer so that parents can access this. We also need to train up our teachers. And so right before school starts, we're going to have a week-long virtual learning kind of symposium where teachers can get on and learn more about what teaching in the virtual learning environment is like. And of course, students being able to access this learning environment. A lot of that is done one-on-one as teachers work with them and the different tools we have in place. And actually, what I'll show you here next is a lot of the tools that we think need to be in place that simplify the learning and the education environment when in the virtual setting that we wouldn't need at least nearly as much in the regular school setting.
Yeah, but I'm just curious. Let me follow up. Yeah, but I'm yes and no. I mean, time is of the essence when we start the school year. Time is of the essence, and if we have 1,000 children and families that are struggling, to realize this is the real thing for the entire school year. Mm-hmm. How will we be able to know who is struggling and where they're struggling, and how will we get them the support on a real-time basis? Because I could see that being day 1 goes to day 3, goes to day 7, and then the give up index starts to creep in.
Right. So again, that's the way that we look at this is the same way we look at the regular school setting. And we use this tiered intervention approach. And so most of our students are tier 1 kids. 80% of our kids are tier 1 kids. You teach them in a regular way. They learn in, very simply and just basic instruction. When you move to a 2-tier kid, these are the kids that need an additional scaffolding. They don't quite learn exactly as you hoped in the regular environment, and they need some assistance along the way. And we also have some tier 3 kids that need even more assistance. Well, this is true in the virtual setting as well. And we started to put that together as to really what does a tier 2 kid and a tier 3 kid look like? What are the struggles that they have? What sorts of scaffolding do we put in place to assist them? And as you said, quickly, because 1 is identification, and then 2 is, what sorts of assistance should we give them? And so it's about having those scaffolds in place, so it's easy to connect up the kid that's showing these struggles with the assistance that needs to happen. And so for instance, a student may struggle because of poverty. And so maybe they don't have the connection at home, the internet connection is necessary. And so do they need a Wi-Fi hotspot? Maybe. Do they need another device? Maybe. So it's about assessing what kind of help they need there. I'd mentioned about, maybe we need to have some of those kids be in class every day. Now that's assuming we're in a blended environment. If we're in a 100% virtual environment, we're going to try and figure that out through that mode, in that we don't have the option of bringing them into school. So yeah, what you're saying is exactly what we're working on through this summer, is identifying what it means to be a tier 1 kid, a tier 2 kid, a tier 3 kid, and what do we offer in those positions. Now, the assessment is typically through the classroom teacher. That classroom teacher knows who is engaging Google Classroom and completing assignments and engaged in the assignments and who is not. And then that job of that teacher is to figure out, okay, why not? In some of the cases, it's fairly simple. In some of the cases, the teacher is not able to really make that connection. And this is where we jump into having other folks come in and help out, whether it be the counselor, it might be an assistant principal, it might be a social worker. It might even be just having tech work with them. But we're working on the plan so that we have identified resources for all of those issues. It's a big job. Does that help?
Yeah, it helps. As you're talking, I won't belabor the point. But in my mind, I start thinking about boots on the ground. I mean, how you gonna do we have enough people to deploy on a real-time basis to keep these kids? See, it's one thing to do it, in a classroom with a child struggling, and so we get help right there, real time. But in a remote setting,
Yes.
I mean, I'm just asking you, do we have the resources, or have we invested the resources?
Not yet, but that's what the
to
next
be
spreadsheet-
real-time service to these people.
Yeah. So, and we're still writing grants for additional social workers and interventionists and that sort of thing. These are people that they get down to the one-on-one assistance, and at times even, doing home visits, that sort of thing. So yeah, we can always use more, and we are striving to find more folks. But you're right. If we do 100% virtual environment, the challenges are daunting.
I think something also to keep in mind, even in a normal situation where we have students in the seats, we never have 100% participation rate. And no matter how many resources we put at it, we can't force people to do certain things. I think if this happens again and we go this way, I think one thing we will need to do is take away the incentive of you're guaranteed a certain grade. I think when they know they have to be working for their grade from the very beginning of the semester, that's going to increase the participation rate.
It will be. If you remember back when we talked about why we didn't hold them accountable for grades in the latter part of the semester, and it was because we could not guarantee the curriculum. That's why we want to say that I can 100% guarantee the curriculum when August comes, because we do need to hold the students accountable. And that is the goal, that if we're 100% virtual, there's going to be 100% accountability, that you need to work as though you were sitting in class and completing assignments, turning them in, putting in the effort necessary. But that's what makes, Mr. Tody's point so important, that we have to remove all excuses. And so even though, Mr. Moore, as you said, there's a probability that some students are not going to completely engage, our goal should still be 100%.
I know we're focusing as we should on the students, but are we saying that that the teachers have the same resources available? Do they have everything that they need? What are we? I guess I'm assuming that they do, but what are they? Are they lacking any things that we need to improve their delivery of the instruction?
So great segue, Mr. Burton, because the next thing I have you look at is the virtual learning budget needs. And there it is. Hang on a second. I've got, speaking of children in the school district, they seem to like to come over to the house here. So hang on a second.
One of those is not mine, is it?
No, not yours.
Thank you.
All right, so this spreadsheet lays out the needs that we have to be able to do what we need to do. And there's a lot. There's a lot there. Hotspots for students, this is just an estimation of 100 hotspots. We may need more. And the survey that we have that started today is going to help us have an idea about how many we're going to need. The devices for all students, that's making sure that we go down all the way to kindergarten with devices. And actually, if you look down, so that's the devices are the Chromebooks, the carts, what we need in the classroom to charge them and store them and all that sort of thing. The devices and carts for new trails are specifically just for SPED students that are pre-K. We aren't planning on doing devices for pre-K non-SPED students, for gen ed students. We'll support them in other methods, but we do think that we need for our SPED students to have access to the devices. The web camera, microphone, speakers, and a second monitor for all teachers, that's the equipment necessary to be able to run a Zoom class along with a regular class. And so as the teacher's teaching, they're going to have the video camera on a tripod. They'll have a microphone in the middle of the classroom that picks up all of the action in the classroom. The second monitor so they can have, do the work they're doing plus the work. We did find actually with the Zoom meetings and everything in the fall and the spring, that one of the struggles that teachers had was when you only have one monitor, it's tough to teach and interact with the students. I mean, as I'm doing this, I have two monitors up, and I'm sure several of you also have two monitors. So that's a necessary component for us to be able to do this. IXL is a computer program that we use that has math and ELA programs, for our K through 8 kids, and we'd like to expand it into them. Virtual learning coordinator would be a stipend. That's a position. That's a full-time position. And that person is in charge of making sure that our program and our virtual learning is going well. And we would still have kids in programs through launch, classes through Fuel Ed, and then also classes that we would do virtually. So they would be coordinating all of that. You know, this person will coordinate all of that. We'll get that position posted by next week. Virtual learning writing stipends, our curriculum, our folks are writing right now. And as they're writing curriculum, for those classes we designated they're going to be virtual classes, they're writing additional supports into those classes so that they can be taught in the virtual learning environment. 1 FTE for tech, because we're talking about adding a ton of devices, and they're going to need support for those devices. Computer repair and parts, obvious. Drawing tablet for secondary math teachers, that's something that they can, as they do on the tablet, they can work math problems and it comes up on the screen. Obviously, it's just hard to do math with a keyboard and a mouse. Gizmos is a program that shows science experiments. So it's easy to show forces of motion, pendulum, that sort of thing with the kids. Chromebooks for all the instructional assistants. Mr. Toady, you'd asked about boots on the ground. We need our IAs to be more hands-on with the virtual setting. And so we need to give them a device to be able to be more hands-on in the virtual setting. No Red Ink is a high school ELA program that assists with writing. Whiteboards and markers, very simple. But if I've got a whiteboard and a marker, I can do demonstrations of things with the camera pointing at it and the kids can see what I'm doing. And it's just a good teaching tool that all the teachers would like to have. Talking points for ELL. As you can see, that's just a good app for students to be able to talk back and forth. And there's human translation actually with this, which is a pretty neat deal. RAS Plus, an ELA program for K-5. Explode the Code for SPED and reading. Nearpod is a tool that makes Google Classroom a little bit more user-friendly as a teacher. Edmark Online for functional skills. Delta Math, a bunch of videos for 9 through 12, very similar to Khan Academy, but we think it's a bit superior. Seesaw is a parent communication tool for K-1-2 because obviously the teacher, a lot of what's going on with K-1-2 is the parent doing the teaching at home and the teacher assisting in that process. And so this helps with that. Greg Tang is our math program that we've been working with. And this is an online version of Greg Tang that's very, very helpful for our teachers. So those are the items that we're looking at needing. And it comes with a pretty hefty price tag at $750,000, but very necessary for us to go virtual or blended next year.
Dr. Huff.
Yes, sir.
How many of these items will be able to be used even if we buy them and don't have to have significant virtual?
All of them are usable in the classroom. The only thing, if we were like 100% in class, no virtual learning, I'd say that the biggest one would be this webcam or microphone speakers and all that. But we're actually going to be building virtual classes, and I believe that we will be teaching some virtual classes even if we're all 100% in. We're going to have some parents that want to have virtual, and we'll be ready for that with all this equipment.
And when is the drop dead date to order all these things?
Depends on the thing.
Asked for the spending.
Yeah, some of them have a lag time, and like the devices. It takes time to order the device and get the device in. We're finding actually that there is a supply issue with web cameras. We are not the only school that's had this brilliant idea of ordering web cameras for everybody. And so Melissa is working on that to see what kind of time frame we have. And some of these things we need to order like tomorrow. Some of the things like gizmos and IXL, it's immediate. We just make the purchase and it's immediately available.
Well, but you made a good point that the districts around the community, they're all doing this.
Yep.
There's a $1 million price tag on every one of them. And if we don't get our order in, we're standing at the back of the line. And then you multiply that by the number of states and schools. You got to get to the front of the line. You really have to. Ordering it is mission critical right now to get this stuff in, test it, and ship back what doesn't work, train. I'd encourage you to order tomorrow if you could.
Well, this is why we're talking tonight, because we do view this as an emergency situation that on some of this, if we don't get going on it now, we won't have it in August.
Mr. Toda, you're exactly right. And not only on the instructional side, but on the sanitation side as well. On some of the devices that we have to sanitize buses, we've got to get those things ordered now or we won't have them here in time. And Dr. Shelton might be able to speak to that a little bit, but he also can speak to, on this big price tag of $777,000, I think we just had our application for the CARES Act money approved, where we'll receive some additional money from the federal government to help offset some of these costs. Dr. Shelton, you want to speak to that?
Yes, thank you very much. As Dr. Markley indicated, our application for the CARES Act money, at least a portion of it was approved today. We will submit for the full $2 million that have been allocated. We'll initially see 75% of that, and then probably within the next 6 to 12 to 18 months receive the other 500,000 that will come to the district. So there are funds available for this. Also, additionally, there are funds, Dr. Markley mentioned sanitation of buses and classrooms, the masks that we've purchased. We'll be able to request reimbursement for those types of purchases either through FEMA, which will pay up to 75% of those funds back to the district. Also, there is some CARES Act money that has been routed through the county, which we will ask once the county determines what that process is. And then just today, DESE requested, sent out a survey asking what kind of expenses, extraordinary expenses, have we incurred as related to the closure and COVID. And so we'll submit that, our response on that survey, assuming that they have some funds possibly at their access. So, but to your point, Mr. Toady, there are many things that we need to get done in a timely fashion that we are balancing the need to follow our processes and procedures to be very good stewards of the taxpayers' funds, but also be responsive in a way that meets the needs of our students and our staff in a timely fashion. So right now it's somewhat tricky to balance those two.
So do you want a motion on any of these purchases tonight or wait till our June 29th meeting?
Well, you could bring a motion. You know, the part of the procedures that we haven't gone through is the competitive bidding process. And so, you know, the board could take action on suspending those processes for these particular purchases. The purchases that Dr. Markley mentioned, sanitation purchases, but also these purchases. And if you would suspend those competitive bidding processes so that we can move quickly on these particular purchases, these alone, then as well as the sanitation purchases, the cleaning devices that Dr. Markley mentioned, that would allow us to move quickly.
Shelley can probably cite the exact board policy, but there is an emergency clause for purchasing that the board can approve those later, such as these that you see before you. Shelley, you want to comment on that?
There is, but these fall under these are going to be attached to federal dollars. So we've got the additional overlay of federal monies being at play. What I would suggest is if the board is comfortable with certain budgeted amounts or dollar amounts that have been presented, this is all still under report of superintendent, to grant preliminary authorization for the budgeted amounts. And then we can circle back legally through what requirements can be waived and what requirements have to be met because of what the source of the dollars is.
So you're saying that, are you saying that we're going to have to tie the fourth line item, device and carts for new trails, into a federal appropriation? I mean, that'll take forever.
No, you have certain procedures that you have to follow when the source of your funds are federal dollars, and some of this is going to be funded, as was mentioned, by the CARES Act money.
Now, we have been told by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education that there's going to be quite a bit of leeway granted to districts on the spending of these dollars. All of these things you see down through there, we're making the assumption now that they will be eligible under those expenses because they're a direct result of the pandemic itself. That's what we're being told.
So, okay, so that if we bid out every one of these line items that we require a bid, what's the turnover time in an emergency bid through vendor average? Is it a week, 2 weeks? What's the timeline?
Well, it takes some time because you have to advertise for a couple weeks, and then you have to give a couple weeks of response. And so it does take time to get that competitive bid process. But not all these are necessary for that because we have some of these are consortium. We have like the web cameras, for instance. We're getting those through a consortium, and so we don't have to bid those out. And I'll also point out that these are estimates at this point in time, and we could we may need to spend slightly more. These are good estimates. They're not just wild guesses. But even like web cameras, we're finding out like today, we found out just today, that the specific web camera that we thought we were going to get was not available. And so we had to actually upgrade to a different web camera. And so once you get into the weeds of this, you may see a 10% increase based on availability of product.
Well, why don't you, here's a suggestion, Dr. Barkley. Why don't you take this material, circle the wagons with your staff, and give us the tightest bidding process we can venture into that is still legal, and get back to us. I think this group would be happy to meet on an emergency basis to get appropriations made for these. Because if we're 2 weeks to bid and 2 weeks to receive the bids, we're at a month, and then a week to grind it. That's 5 weeks, and now we're it's a challenge as it is right now. So if you could help us with that, I'm sure we could help you.
I would actually prefer to entertain a motion to do what Dr. Shelton said and suspend the bidding rules where possible. What we can bid out, let's do, but let's have a motion to suspend bidding rules where possible to speed this up.
Mr. President,
Ms. Salisbury.
I make a motion that we suspend bidding processes where we can so that we can move. I don't think I'm saying exactly what you said, so that we can move forward on these items that we are needing.
I'll second the motion.
There's a motion and a second. Rachel will always make it.
She'll clean it up.
Yeah.
And just so you know exactly what we're talking about when we're talking about and I'm sorry, I'm out of turn here. You guys want to vote or you want to discuss? I was going to add one point here.
No, yep. Go ahead, Dr. Huff.
What I was going to say is that there's not very many of these will actually suspend, because as I'm looking down through here, it's the $15,000 and more. I come down to the IXL we already have. That's already, we've already gone through the process for it.
Okay, we're just saying where possible or where needed.
Yeah, it's not very many things is what I'm saying. So we're not talking about a ton of this.
Well, to Mr. Tody's point, we'll do this as well. We'll go back through these, and ones that we can bid, we will document all these different scenarios we have here. So we'll have that for you. You're suspending this motion, but it'd still be good to have that. Here's what we did on this one, for example. Here's what we did on this one. We were able to do this as opposed to the other. But we'd like, at the same time, get these things ordered as quickly as possible.
And you will need a second motion. The first motion, Bobby properly stated as suspending the procedural requirements for procurement. Then you'll need a second motion to actually authorize the expenditure for those items that need to be ordered right away.
Mr. Tody made that second motion.
You made the second to your motion.
Yeah, I will make that motion. What you just said.
Well, let's vote on the first motion first. The first motion to suspend the bidding requirements temporarily. Any other comments about that? All right, all in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. All right, now, as Shelley mentioned, I would entertain a motion to approve on an emergency basis the expenditure of these funds or these items.
Mr. President, I move that we suspend our procedures to procure these items.
Is there a second?
Second.
That was the first motion. The second motion needs to be to actually authorize expenditure.
Mr. President, I move that we authorize expenditures for the items that will be bought through the first motion.
Through the emergency.
Through the emergency orders.
Second.
There's a motion, a second, and
Mr. Moore,
you'll work with Rachel to clean that language up on that motion.
I thought it was pretty clean. As fast as
Mr. President, I have a question.
Yes.
It was stated by Mr. Tody, I believe, and Dr. Markley confirmed it, that we would receive documentations of the items that were purchased.
Yes.
That did not go through the proceeding of bidding and all of that, right?
Yes.
I think what we'll do, Ms. Salisbury, is we'll just go through the list of items. We'll go through and document how we procured each one.
Okay, excellent.
Mr. Moore, may I make a request? Could you expand that to also include $75,000 for hygiene, cleaning items, equipment for buses and classrooms? We have a quote for $75,000 that we were going to bring.
Mr. Tody, would you accept a friendly amendment to add "and other items deemed necessary"?
I will suspend my. I'm satisfied with that motion.
All right.
As described.
All right. Any other comments? All right. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. All right. All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Huff. Let's. Okay, back to you, Dr. Markley. Graduation.
All right. Graduation update. I'd sent out some information regarding our graduations on July the 26th at the, no, I'm not on mute. Okay. We had planned to graduate at the Independence Event Center. Now it's called the Cable Dahmer Event Center. And we were working with them, and we have found out or did find out that even though we were able to use it, we were limited to basically 500 participants in the arena itself, which would not satisfy what we're trying to do for graduation with 2 tickets per family. So we immediately began the planning of having outdoor graduations at South High Stadium. We could not have them at Chitwood because of the construction going on there. So that's how we began to follow our path forward with graduation. Now, in the meantime, over the weekend, we discovered that there was another event center that we could possibly use. So we investigated that a little bit, and I have Kim Boloski's on here. She can give you an update of what we found out. But we're looking to rent Starlight Amphitheatre to have our graduation. It has a much greater capacity than the Independence Event Center. And I spoke earlier about how Jackson County and the cities have different capacity amounts in their current phases. Right now, it's our understanding that KC-Mo would allow 50% of that 8,000, which gives us 4,000 to social distance, which is much more than what it was at Cable Dahmer. But Ms. Boloski, are you out there? Could you bring the board up to speed on all? There are many more positive things to this other than just being able to have it there. Go ahead, Kim. The awkward silence. I see her down there. Kim, your mute's still on.
Okay. Is that on now?
You're there.
There we go. Okay. Good evening, everyone. It's kind of exciting that Starlight is available. It's, almost in our backyard. And We have a great connection there. She has been very, very helpful, and they are really trying to promote graduations. They know the importance of that families have and hold graduation as a ceremony and a big part of our young kids' lives. So we have a potential rental agreement for about half the cost of even what Cable Dahmer was going to offer us. They're willing to give us a very good deal. They can keep it on July 26th, so we wouldn't even have to change dates. We will have about a 10-hour time span of the venue, so we can really spread out the times. They will do a video package with us that will include their big screens there at the theater and also a live stream. They are asking, I know Dr. Markley mentioned, that it's a 50% capacity. They are really asking us to probably keep it more in the 1,500 range because of social distancing in order to space everyone out. We'll probably try to keep it around that amount, but that should allow hopefully 4 family members to attend for every graduate. We've got to do some calculations, but I think we're going to be very close to that. They are willing to do some tickets for us and a ticket scanner, so everyone will be checked as they come in. As you know, they have ample parking, which will be very nice. The in and out there will be a bonus. They will also provide staff for security, parking, assistance to seats. So there's some really great additions, benefits that they have and are willing to offer to us. So I don't know if anyone has any questions, but that's the kind of the details of renting Starlight.
Well, I think that sounds like a great option. Kind of surprised we've never thought of that before.
We said the same thing.
But if nothing else, it would give the kids something to say that's different for them and make it just a little bit more special, I think.
Yeah.
Although this was, I guess I might have missed something. I didn't know that we were looking at South for both the graduations. My son might think it's pretty interesting that Raytown would have to come over and graduate at South. But
I thought about the same thing, but I thought for all those years, South High football players had to come over and play football at Chitwood Stadium. Yeah. It probably wouldn't hurt for those graduates to come over one time. But we'll also, what Kim didn't mention, but we'll also look for a rain date as well with them in case we get rained out in that date and try to work within that schedule. But we're excited. That becomes our plan A. Starlight does now, but we'll have our stadiums as backup as well in case something changes at the county, state, federal level in regards to phases.
Are we looking at doing them both on one day still?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, and another plus for Starlight, if you've ever been over there, they've got these huge fans that are stationed around through the theater. And you wouldn't think they work, but on a hot evening, they do work.
Yes.
On a hot day, so it'll be a plus.
Yes. They're even willing to have, at no cost, open their concession stands just to make sure they have water and soda and maybe something simple like nachos available. We can decide on that, but that's another thing they're willing just to do for us.
I was going to ask if funnel cake would be
graduation. That would be great.
It may become a new trend.
Yeah, it might.
Ms. Pike, did you say something?
I just said I was going to ask if funnel cake would be available.
Hope so. All right, great, thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Okay, moving on. Dr. Huff, do you want to mention 8.4?
Yeah, 8.4 are our curriculum and instruction goals. And these are the same goals as we had last year. We did not adjust them at all. We felt that we still needed to work on these same goals. They're still very important. They're good foundations for good instruction. The one overlaying or overarching goal, though, which is an obvious unspoken goal at this point in time, but it is virtual instruction. And these same best practices, though, of instruction that are within our 5 C&I goals work very nicely in the virtual setting or in the regular ed setting. And so we would just apply these goals within the virtual setting.
And 8.5 student handbooks for Herndon Career Center and Raytown Success Academy. It's something we do every year, but have it there for any questions that board members might have. Other than that, that's all I have, Mr. President.
Were there any notable changes to the handbook?
Nothing significant in changes to either handbook.
Any other questions for Dr. Markley? All right, let's go on to the next item. Is there a motion to accept meeting minutes from Curriculum, Instruction, and Professional Development Committee?
Mr. President, I move to accept the meeting minutes from the January 20th, 2020 meeting of the Curriculum, Instruction, and Professional Development Committee meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right.
Second.
All right. Did anyone have anything, Dr. Huff, anyone, any comments about this? All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, say no. That item passes. So meeting minutes from 5/18. How come we don't have a motion on this? Why?
We have a motion on the January meeting because the committee approved the minutes from the January meeting at the May meeting. The reason you're not approving the May meeting is, or that you're not acting on, is because the committee has not approved the minutes from the May meeting. They'll do that at the September meeting.
Okay. Are there any questions about these minutes from anybody on the committee? All right. Mr. Landers, do you have anything on the foundation report?
Yes.
Education Foundation.
Raytown Education Foundation highlights of their May 27th meeting. They elected new officers. They wanted to also thank the outgoing officers, Mary Orler and Matt. Mary Orler was president, Matt Berlinden was the treasurer. Their new officers are President Renee Petit and Treasurer Debbie Sommer. They scholarship and for graduating seniors. They announced their scholarship recipients for the class of 2020. 45 awards for 30 students totaling $41,761. Previous graduates of the renewal scholarships was $24,000. So the tuition checks for 2021 were $65,761. They also are awarded their two learning grants. They received 14 grant proposals for a total of $24,528. The foundation selected 8 recipients for a total of $8,623 with a contingency of $377 for a total of $9,000. You can go on their Facebook page and web page and see pictures of the scholarship recipients and also the grant receivers. And then the bylaws revision, there was a, and I'm just going to read the memo on this one because this is something we will need to vote on, and I'll make a motion here in just a second. Last time the foundation revised bylaws was in 2015. Upon review of the foundation bylaws by the bylaw committee, the committee recommended the following revisions to its board of trustees at the May 27th, 2020 meeting. The recommended revisions were unanimously approved by the board of trustees at that meeting. In accordance with Raytown Educational Foundation current bylaws, the foundation shall be subject to the prior approval of the Board of Education for changes in these bylaws. Therefore, the foundation respectfully requests approval by the Board of Education for revisions approved by the Foundation Board of Trustees. The attached documents outline the revisions approved by the Foundation Board of Trustees listed, and if they're go by the current wording, previous change in rationale, and revised wording. Now, hopefully you have had a chance to look at these, and if you have any questions of the revisions to why, when you read through there, their rationale and what have you, I'll do my best to answer them. But before that, Mr. President, I will move that the Board of Education approve the revision of the Educational Foundation bylaws as presented. And then we'll need a second for that.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other questions for Mr. Landers on that motion? Did I hear? All right. All in favor of that motion to approve the revision, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. All right, that
That's
passes.
the report, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Landers, for that report. And I guess Martha's probably out there listening too. Appreciate your work and appreciate the foundation continuing to do their work through all this, especially with student scholarships. All those things is very much appreciated. I do hope maybe, depending on how things go, you might take a second look on the 5K and whether to do it virtual or not. But that's just me. But thank you guys for your work. Appreciate that. And thank you to the outgoing officers too. They spent a lot of time on that. All right. Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Mr. President, I move the board approve the June 8, 2020 consent agenda as presented, or as amended, I guess it is.
Is there a motion and a second?
Second.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. And the item passes. All right, depository services. Need a motion for this.
Mr. President.
Yes, Ms. Tittle.
Okay, I think I was on mute before. I apologize. But I move that the board approve the annual renewal for depository contract and pledge for banking services by UMB for the period beginning July 1st, 2020 for 1 year. Excuse me, with an option to renew for up to 3. I guess that should be a 3 in parentheses instead of a 2. Up to 3 additional years upon satisfactory annual review.
So is it 3 or 2?
It's 2. It should be 2. This is.
Oh, it should be 2.
All right.
Yes.
Okay.
I apologize. So
was there a second?
Okay.
I seconded.
All right. This is just our standard agreement. Anything else? Anything we need to know about this?
No, it's a 5-year agreement, and we are finishing our 2nd year and beginning our 3rd year with UMB. It was taken out to bid. I guess that would have been the fiscal year of 18, and UMB received the bid at that time.
Okay. All right. All in favor of this motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no.
Aye.
And the motion passes. All right, prime grocery bid. Need a motion for this.
Mr. President, I move that the Board of Education approve the prime grocery bid from Martin Brothers for the approximate amount of $2,500,000 for the 2021 school year.
Is there a motion and a second?
Second.
Second? Go ahead.
Second.
All right, who wants to talk to us about this one?
I believe Dr. Young's on. He can discuss it, but in general, we contract with vendors like this, and for a period of years, like same as with UMB Bank, for example, and it's time to do that, which is why you'll see this and some other food service related vendors. Dr. Young?
That's correct. So we do a 1-year contract with 3 possible renewal years for services rendered for food services required for all of our sites, breakfast, lunch, and after school meal program and summer feeding programs.
The only question I have is why does it say approximate amount? Approximate amount.
We have market values for different products depending on market value for those items. So there is an act of God clause in all RFPs and contracts for food services that vendors can include. So we do have a fluctuating market as well as participation for our different programs. So if it increases or decreases, that dollar figure can fluctuate.
All right. Any other questions or comments? All in favor of this motion say aye.
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 All opposed say no. That item, it's so easy to just spend $2.5 million. Is there a motion to approve the milk bid?
Mr. President, I move that the Board of Education approve the milk bid from Anderson and Erickson for the 2021 school year at an approximate cost of $475,000.
Second.
Any other comments? All right, all in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Dr. Young, could I just ask you a quick question since we're talking about food?
Yes.
How did the shutdown, since we weren't serving meals, we were serving some at some locations, but not as many, how did that affect us financially?
There was an impact, but when we reduced the number of meals that we were providing, that also reduced our expenditures as well. So we were still able to make claims as the waivers and different exemptions came through the USDA and DESE. But the main piece in that's going to be the reduction of expenditures, somewhat mirrors the reduction in participation as well.
Mr. Moore, if you look on, if you noticed on the budget amendment item, there was a $500,000 reduction in the food service supplies and purchase services agenda line item.
All right.
Which reflects that reduction.
Okay, thank you. All right. We got one more bid to approve. Your motion for Pizza Hut pizza services.
Mr. President, I move that the Board of Education approve Pizza Hut as sole provider of pizza services for the approximate annual amount of $80,000 for the 2021 school year.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor? Wait, sorry, Mr. Burton?
Nah, nothing serious. I don't like Pizza Hut.
We're the only provider, so that's why we're using them. I think we used to have Domino's option.
All right, all in favor of that motion, say aye.
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 All opposed, say no. That item passes. All right, now we're going to have a discussion about the reopening committee. we do have a motion here, but let's say, normally I'd have the motion first, but let's have a little bit of discussion first so people understand. Dr. Markley, do you want to start off?
You know, during the last board meeting, we had made the decision to move forward with a committee comprised of board members, parents, patrons, staff, and students to discuss reopening in the fall and all the things that go along with that. And there are a plethora of those items that we're trying to consider and work through. We named Dr. Huck's chairman of that committee, along with Dr. Huff, myself, and Dr. Shelton, helping him work through that process. And he's going to give an update of where we've come so far. We've had a few meetings. We've developed a survey that will be going out here shortly to our families. And we've been talking about the what ifs. So Dr. Hucks, if you wouldn't mind bringing the board up to speed quickly, because on the 29th of this month, when we have our special board meeting to approve the final budget for the FY21 school year, we intend to walk the board through some of the items that we have collected at that point from our community, from the CDC, best practices moving forward for the fall, so we can all be speaking the same language at the end of the day. So Dr. Hucks, would you mind bringing us up to speed?
Oh, let me pull that document back up. As soon as I clicked on it, it disappeared. Let's see. All right, so Dr. Markley described the makeup of the committee, but we do have parents and staff and administrators from all levels of the school district. Board members are participating, and we even have legal counsel sit in on those. We had 2 meetings. We had one on the 26th of May and one on the 2nd of May. The next one will be on the 16th, or not May, the 2nd of June. The next one will be on the 16th of June. And give you an example, what we've done with the committee is we assimilated the various documents that are the recommended guidelines from those authorities or insurance companies that we have to work with. So like the CDC, the MSBA, Center for Education Safety, the music, and we've also heavily referenced Parkway School District document that they had in place as well. And so what we did is we kind of turned that into the framework that we needed to work from. So in other words, if we're working within those, we're meeting all the pieces we need, whether it's with CDC or music, for example. And we're not arbitrary in what we're doing it that way. But our goal is to turn that framework into the master plan. In doing so, departments and schools, they're drafting their contingency plans in a subcommittee type fashion. So food service, for example, they're meeting with the necessary parties to draft a plan, which they've basically already done. Many of the schools have done that as well already. You heard from Dr. Mixon earlier about summer school. They've been doing the same thing, utilizing the information from this framework to guide their direction for summer school. And as Dr. Markley mentioned, as well as Dr. Huff earlier, we created a survey that went out today to parents, and it asked a variety of questions, especially with the virtual aspect of devices and that sort of thing, to get a better understanding. We have to better inform Dr. Huff's purchase needs, for example, along with other things like ridership. In other words, you know, will there be parents who won't want to come to have their kids come to school no matter what? That might apply for transportation as well. It might apply for daycare as well. So there's some questions along those lines as well. We used a North Kansas City template who had put out a survey, and that helped the committee as a whole have a discussion with what should be on there. We took the comments from the committee as a whole, and then we created a subcommittee to develop out that survey and get it out as of today. We do plan to, implement further surveys. For example, we'll be surveying our teachers and staff at some point. and give you an example, depending on what we find from the parents' preferences, that will inform our direction. And then at that point, for example, we'll want to talk to the staff about how to work through all that via survey. And then, next steps, as I mentioned, we'll review the data from that survey. We'll close it Wednesday and see what we get back. But, a question on there is about types of attendance levels, whether it's 100%, 50%, 20%, or virtual. I mentioned transportation, ridership, daycare utilization. And then there's a question on there that, what are the most important factors to you as a parent when it comes to returning to school, like wearing face masks 100% of the time, or wearing face masks where we can't social distance, temperature checks, things like that. So we'll modify our draft contingency plans based on our survey results. So on the 16th, we'll meet with the committee to talk about that, and we will make modifications that are meeting the needs that we've identified via survey. And then at that point, we will begin to survey staff as well to see how to work through those modifications that we plan to put in our contingency plans. Then after that, our goal would be to put this before the board, perhaps in a special board meeting to go through it in depth, and then communicate it out to patrons after that, so that everybody understands what it's going to look like for next year. Any questions?
One of the issues that's surfacing, as you know, in the higher ed industry is extracurricular activities. Do you have a committee assigned for that aspect, sports and dramatic arts and music and so forth? Do you have a committee that's dealing with that singularly?
So the committee as a whole, that is think of that as a department, so like athletics and activities. So our committee as a whole have representatives dealing with each of these pieces, whether it's transportation or athletics and activities. Music, for example, had a document that they would like their policyholders to comply with when it comes to athletics and activities. So we're working with that, among the other guidelines as mentioned too, but we are developing a plan specific to athletics and activities. And that'll include things like considering when to cancel an event or hold an event with a modified capacity and that sort of thing.
And just to follow up, I believe the MSBA had a section where they dealt with some of the aspects of extracurricular activities, particularly sports, and the issue came down to, from their perspective, can you respect the 6 feet distance initiative and still have those sporting events? And I'm just curious about what your take is, whoever wants to speak on that point, with respect to how that might affect our ability to have extracurricular activities in the fall.
As Dr. Markley, this is Steve Shelton. As Dr. Markley has indicated, we're going to follow, and Dr. X has indicated, we're going to follow CDC guidelines, but also the Missouri State High School Activities Association has to weigh in on this and give us the green light to have competition and practices. At this point, what we're allowed to do, what we're doing is our athletes are having conditioning sessions of 10 athletes per coach, maintaining that social distancing. There's no physical contact, no body to body. They're running stairs, they're doing agility drills, those sorts of things. But at this point in time, there's no plan for any physical contact, the physicality of athletics to take place until we're given the green light to do that. Even our next phase of this, once we get the green light to move into the next phase of this, it'll be sports specific activities, but no contact, such as basketball players playing without defenses, and receivers and quarterbacks throwing the football to one another, pitchers and catchers and batters throwing to one another. no physical contact whatsoever. But Misha will give us guidance as to when we can begin those type of activities with our athletes.
I think we can anticipate too, it's going to vary by sport, as Dr. Shelton suggested. Like in the fall, girls golf, as opposed to the restrictions on girls golf, as opposed to the restrictions on 11-man football, are going to be very different. But again, we'll be following whatever those guidelines are coming from Misha or the CDC, and Misha will be following the CDC guidelines. And that could result in, worst case scenario, not having football. We just don't know yet.
I think the committee understands that some of these decisions are going to be made for us, just like they have been already. So the committee is trying to anticipate what things might look like and put things into place when certain decisions are made for us and how we will implement those decisions.
Exactly. So if we, after the survey, decide that our 4 options with learning are 100%, 50%, 20%, and virtual, all of our departments and schools will develop what school looks like during the day, or what transportation or food service looks like during the day at those 4 levels. And athletics and activities, for example, will work, as Dr. Shelton mentioned, with those MSHA guidelines that are informed by the CDC. Any other questions?
All right, so now I would entertain a motion to approve this committee.
Mr. President, I move the board approve the reopening committee under the authority of the board policy BCE.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Any final questions or comments? All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no.
Aye.
Thank you. And that motion passes. All right, the next item is a discussion about committees. Much like we just approved that committee, there were some questions about approvals for committees such as Ray Team and the Citizens Advisory Committee. So we were going to have a discussion about that. I'll let Dr. Markley, do you want to start us off on this one?
Only thing out there is, the board, some members on this Board of Education were either here or weren't here when these committees were approved or not, in past motions or whatever the case may have been. And we haven't approved them in a long time. I know we haven't approved the Citizen Advisory Committee, but Ray Team has been in existence since I've been here, and Mr. Landers alluded it was informed back when he was a teacher in the district many years ago. So other than that, the board policy does require that committees be approved by the board, and we can certainly do that. But just throwing it out there for any questions anybody might have about the committees that are provide information and sometimes recommendations to the board.
I have a statement.
Sorry, I'm sorry, Bobby.
I just wanted to make a statement about the Citizen Advisory Committee. One of the things that concerns me is that most of the attendees are staff members or students. And so my concern is to see that, I don't know how we can reach out to the community and bring in parents and other members that might be interested in what's going on in the district. So, but that's what I would like to see more of than just staff and students. I mean, that is okay, but I think you really need to reach out and bring in the community to help in anything concerning decisions that they would like to recommend to the board.
Yeah, we try to ask our building principals to identify some sets of parents that would be interested in serving on that committee, so we can get those people you're talking about, Bobby. That isn't always successful, but you're right. A lot of times as these committees go on throughout the year, the people that end up attending, either those students or staff, and however we can encourage them to continue to attend. I think one of the encouragements would be the topic at hand, that they feel worthwhile one that they feel valued in providing direction in. That's something we have to do as well.
I have a point, but my screen just really exploded here with advertisements. I don't know why, but in any event, I raised the issue, and the issue is a very simple one. There's a board section on there's a section on board committees, which I don't have in front of me. I've read it several times, and it simply says that the board appoints committees. And so what if you want, or if anybody wants a citizens advisory committee, I mean, that's fine. All we need to do is see the names and we can approve the committee. It's that simple. Rating doesn't fall into the board committee policy. It falls into the committees that the superintendent can approve, and we don't need to be involved in it because Ray Team is completely a group of either employees, staff, professionals, administrative folks, and it's certainly within board policy for Dr. Markley to appoint anyone he wants on that committee, or for that matter, anyone of those of the teachers' representatives to put whoever they want on the committee. I think the issue is that when we do have policies, and it seems that an easy thing to do is to determine the objective of a committee, determine who is, as it said in the policy, to determine who is being asked to serve, what are the qualifications, what's the term, what are the issues we're going to deal with, and we approve it. And so I don't know if it's anything more complex than to follow the policies. Now, maybe I'm missing something here, but that was the issue that I raised previously. Let's just follow the policies.
Well, that's fine with me. I think we have approved the committees and the CAC, but if we need to approve it on a yearly basis when the makeup of the committee changes, we can do that also.
I think that'd be great.
Alan, are you planning on having any more meetings before school starts again?
I think there's potentially, I think it would be good for us to get this reopening committee information out to as many citizens as possible. And if that means flowing this out to the committee through written, just at simplest and written form, we can do so. I think really though, to Mr. Tody's point, of getting a list of those names in front of the board so the board can approve them, I think our first meeting would probably be in September if we were going to do that and meet as a full committee with the agenda items that we have on there that we want to investigate. But really, the reopening committee, I think, takes the place of the CAC committee because that's something they might be dealing with if we sent this reopening in the fall task to them. So at this point, let's hold off and we'll have a list of folks ready to go by the August or September meeting. Most likely September, though, when we can see who we have back in school and who's ready to participate. Because we want people on there that want to participate and will be committed to the number of meetings that we have, which are monthly. And we want to make sure the same people are coming every time.
Hey, Dr. Markley.
Yes, ma'am.
I just, for some reason, I don't recall us ever approving the committee. I do recall us conversating about it, but not approving it. But that's just a statement, not to be addressed or anything, just a statement. But I do want to ask about approving individuals. Are we talking about approving the people that are on the committee? I got two questions, so I'm gonna get them both out. Are we talking about approving people that are potential members of the committee? And are we also, in reference to the committee receiving things that they're to discuss, are these things that the board is recommending to be taken to the committee, or are we just doing that and then getting the committee to refer back to us what their thoughts are?
In my opinion, I think it's what you said in the latter, Ms. Salisbury, about one, approving the members on the committee, but two, using that committee to help bring recommendations back to the board on certain things that we're investigating. If I had to choose one, for example, that's maybe expanding our CAPS program to other school districts. Another one might be as far as who we're, expanding a program for ROTC in the district. Those types of things. Much like we did in the past, we did some things with, I think back to the certain policies and statutes that are not statutes, policies. Student drug testing is one that we sent to the Citizens Advisory Committee. It'd be those type of things.
Okay, so just to be clear, these are things that the board is recommending for the committee to discuss, research, what have you, right?
I think we come up with a committee and we come up with a list of things that we want the committee to investigate, and we put both those items in front of the board at the same time.
Okay, and what about, are we setting a criteria for membership?
I think we can set a criteria. It's basic right now as far as some members of the staff, members of our staff, both certified and support staff, along with parents, patrons, students, etc. But we can clean that up and narrow that down.
Yeah, I'm not recommending that. I'm asking the question. That's all. I'm not recommending that we have a criteria for membership other than the fact that they be patrons of residents of the district or patrons of the district.
That's what the makeup of it would look like.
Okay. All righty.
All right.
I have a question.
Approve that at the start of the school year, Mr. Burton.
So how do we decide which topics or which decisions or things we have to decide? How do we decide which ones go to committee? I mean, do we have is that just by vote of the board?
Well, I think the starting point, Mr. Burton, is our board goals, what we're trying to do, and some of the things that we need to get done to try and reach those goals. Whether it be, some of the board goals that we have, one that would fit well in the Citizens Advisory Committee would be creating a welcoming environment where all members of the community are welcomed and valued. That's certainly some things we'd want to hear from folks out in the community that are a member of this committee, to see what ideas they might have, or how can we make them feel valued and others. So it's those types of things. That's a starting point. If we have a bond issue come up, the board comes up with the projects after they've consulted with the architects in the planning process. And here's the things that the board, like the last session we went through, that the board came up with their top priorities and then sent it to the Citizen Advisory Committee to look at what their top priorities may be, and then they compared notes. So things like that.
Let's just in the future make sure we're a little bit more formal about first presenting to the board and then presenting to the CAC about which items we want them to discuss and research.
Yeah,
we can do that.
Moore?
Mr. Landers.
Yeah, a little more clarification, maybe just for me, but if we've got this committee and we come up with ideas, like Mr. Burton was talking about, what ones do we send to them? And then we ask them to research and get opinion and what have you. So what if in this committee, what if somebody came up with a tremendous idea and the committee thought, well, that's really a good one, but it wasn't one we sent to them? Can they bring it to us to look at and think about? Or
yes, they do already do that. I think with several things.
The way I understood the answer to what Bobby's question was, it would be, we would send them things that we want them to look at and survey and what have you, but it wouldn't come in reverse order. If it comes in reverse order, I think that's good, and I think it should. But maybe I'm just misunderstanding the flow of communications.
That's what I said, Mr. Landers, but the main thing is the focus should be on the board requesting rather than the committee suggesting and recommending to the board. I think the board should always maintain the leadership role versus the submission role. I'd rather see the board putting out what it wants from the committee versus the committee putting back to the board what it wants.
And I think that is what is happening. Alan will come to us, say, we've got this issue, or let's send it to the CAC. So, but let's just make it a little more formal, and we definitely won't ever try to limit the discussion of the CAC. Because you're right, they may have a good idea about something, and they feel free to send it to us. But for the most part, it'll be ideas that we come up with, or Alan, the administration comes up with, we'll discuss and then send them.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions or comments on that item?
Thanks, Bobby.
Welcome, sir.
All right, next item. I think we're going to have a discussion, just a little bit more discussion about the staff pay issue regarding the COVID-19 shutdown. Was there any questions or comments?
I wasn't certain that we were going to discuss it at this point, but I'd be happy to lead the discussion and then ask for comments. You may recall that the board received from Dr. Markley and other members of the community the manner in which we were going to address support staff compensation. Much of our support staff did not work during the COVID-19 shutdown. And so I think hopefully I'm not misquoting, but I think the email came out and said that the employees, staff needed to work for summer school in the summer months for free. And as substituting hours for the hours they didn't work during that COVID shutdown. And when I read that, I was surprised at the logic, and I was concerned about why weren't we as a board informed of the issue and could weigh in on it. And we did weigh in on it. Some of us made some comments to the administration that maybe they should reconsider, and reconsideration was granted. Now that was done on an informal basis, and perhaps it should have been done on a formal basis so that all parties could have their say. But then the next night we got an email, or the group got an email stating that that Dr. Markley had changed his mind. I think those are the facts. The issue, though, is that board policy GDBA supports the notion that that was our call, that the board makes the decisions on pay scale for staff. The board makes the decision on stipends for staff. And in that particular case, I think we should have reflected a little more carefully on the specific policy that deals with support staff compensation. And so I think on reflection, I think you said it really well, Rick. Maybe we need to be a little more formal, perhaps, in understanding, reviewing, and complying with our policy. And I think we got to the right point, but I think we have to make certain that the authority on these decisions goes through the policies, and that we research and analyze and come to the conclusion. And we got, like I say, we got to the right point. I think also we have to be careful, as we all know, about having conversations and that are not in a meeting. And but I think we still got to the right position. And I guess that this also memorializes some of the conversations that did take place that ended up with the reversal of the decision. So I'm happy to quote from the policy. There's two or three paragraphs that are on note here, right, apply to the situation. And so let's work a little harder to comply with these policies. They're there for a reason, I think.
think that's fine. I don't have any disagreement with that. I think we did get to the right decision. I will just say, defense of how it all happened, we were treading ground that we've never tread before, and it was unusual, and I think everyone was in agreement. There was just questions on what to do and how to handle it, but yes, we can, hopefully we won't have that again, but Dr. Markley, anything else to add on that?
I have nothing to add other than you're right. It's ground that we've never been on before, and decisions, making decisions in this time. We need to focus on having as much support as we can, and certainly follow policy as Mr. Tody suggested. And who knows, moving forward, we're going to have some tougher decisions probably to make as we continue down the path.
Yeah, I'm glad we did what we did. I think it definitely served us well. It helped a lot of people out. We all saw the notes and cards that people were very thankful through this trying time. So I'm glad we did it. We can be more formalized in the future, but hopefully we won't have to do that again. Any questions or comments about that?
Yeah, I have a comment. I'm glad we did what we did as well. I did have some concerns of how we did it, and maybe Shelley can speak to this. I mean, it seems like we just got, we figured out that all of us would agree to it. And I don't know if that's a meeting or not. I don't know. Should I even be, Shelley, you can tell me if that's something we should be concerned about on how we did it or not.
And if you're talking about the discussions had, I'm not familiar with how you got to that point, but it's not uncommon for members of the administration to have individual conversations with board members in between board meetings, as long as we're not pulling a quorum of the board together as part of that discussion and inadvertently creating a meeting. I'm not sure if that's your question.
So like
getting to the result was the.
For me to be on a call with another board member and then another person calling other board members to make sure that we're all in agreement. I just thought I remembered something that even maybe not a quorum of us being all together at once, it still could constitute a quorum, even though, was that a vote? Did we, or was it not?
I'm not aware of any vote. It's not uncommon, especially during this time of closure. There have actually been a lot of conversations. I know that superintendents and other administrators have been having a lot of individual conversations, just trying to see where everyone's at, because a lot of the daily details of the closure situation have transpired very quickly, and most boards only meet once a month. I wasn't part of the conversations. I'm not aware of any votes.
Are you saying that the way we communicated that decision, you believe we were fine in doing that?
I don't know what occurred, but based on the little bit that I'm getting from you, it sounds like someone maybe called or had a conversation with one or two board members at a time.
Yeah.
And that's not uncommon.
Yeah, okay. That hasn't happened. And I will say there was no determination that any kind of vote needed to even happen.
Okay.
The decision was made.
There was a vote, not, yeah.
Yeah, there was a decision made, and then it became obvious that the board did not want to go that direction. And so we let that be known.
Okay.
So there's no formal vote. So you're right, Shelley, it was happening very quickly. We just let it be known that we were not in favor. The decision was made, and so a different decision was made.
Yeah, I'm just asking. I wasn't.
So yeah, I'm okay with Shelley.
Clarification.
So in case Shelley wants to add anything else to it.
I'm glad we did it. Yeah.
Mr.
Shelley,
Moore.
well, first I was going to, Shelley, is there anything else you want to add after you hear what I said?
No, I apologize. I'm not aware of what you were initially talking about, so.
All right. Ms. Salisbury?
Okay, I just wanted to comment. One, the beautiful thing about Alonzo is that he has gone to school, to the training, and is fresh in him. And so when he sees something that doesn't fit that training, he asks questions. I hope I'm hitting it right, Mr. Burton. Yeah. But the other thing is that I want to back what Mr. Tody said about the policy. The policies are there for a reason, and we do need administration to adhere to those policies. And yeah, we are excited. We were excited to support our staff as far as not having them to work, and it was a great idea. Perhaps the method that we used to get to that place wasn't good, but we got the results of being a blessing to the district employees, and so that was good. But I just want to support Mr. Burton in that, because I think it's marvelous. I love it because of the fact the stuff is fresh in him, and he can help correct us when we steer.
Those are the right questions to be asking. And I'll add, I know that some of these issues, you all have been faced with some novel issues and things have moved quickly. You are certainly not alone. We have been hosting Friday afternoon KC Metro-wide Zoom meetings with HR professionals and doing the same things in other operational areas, because a lot of the issues that you all have been navigating, your counterparts are navigating the same issues, and there isn't necessarily a right or wrong way to do it. There isn't necessarily a concrete legal answer to a lot of those situations. So as unorthodox and unusual as the process may have seemed, you're not alone in having to make similar decisions in what has been a very gray area for a lot of board members.
All right, any other questions or comments? All right, let's go ahead with the rate team presentation. Who's going to start us off?
Oh, that would be me. So good evening. I think I'd like to first, on behalf of Ray Team, say thank you to the board for giving us the opportunity to present to you tonight. My name is Susie Morgan, and following me will be Amy Lowe Smith and Brian Wise. So we'll be presenting our report to you tonight. So starting off, you can follow along on the slideshow. On the second slide, it lists our 14 members that we had this year. We have a combination of certified support staff and administrative employees. We try to have a variety of elementary, middle school, and high school, and different departments around the district, so that we can have as big a voice as we can and touch as many departments and get as much information from a broad range of employees. Our mission, excuse me, for Ray Team, we work collaboratively to get a consensus when we make our recommendations. We make our recommendations in the areas of salary, benefits, and working conditions. The next slide just shows our meeting norms that we use every meeting that we have. We come up with these norms ourselves so that we can keep the meeting flowing, but still are able to cover the issues as comprehensively as we can. And the next slide talks about our scheduling and gathering information. We met in person this year, September, October, November, January, and February, and we met virtually. We actually met virtually in April and May, not in March and April. So that was that's a mistake that I had on the slides. Every year, we send out a survey to all district staff, And those survey results are what we use to put together the list of issues that we will talk about throughout the year. We had just over 1,000 employees this year who filled out the survey. It is a confidential survey. We have an out of approximately 1,400 employees. So we feel that that's a very good sampling. We got a lot of very good responses and information from the district employees that we used this year. So Amy Lowsmith will go next. She'll cover the information from our survey.
Good evening. So I'm going to start off with the non-monetary issues. We ask two things. We ask monetary and non-monetary. And so this is our non-monetary from certified. In elementary, we had a lot of people who would like their plan time protected with fewer DRTs. And for elementary, also more time in the classroom at the beginning of the year. Fewer meetings outside of contract hours in the beginning of the year because it's heavy with activities. And then the ability to have a school appropriate beverage at work to include coffee and water. In secondary, some people would like block scheduling, some groups didn't. They want to protect their plan time on Wednesday with subbing issues. The cleanliness of the buildings was an issue for them. The BIS model in secondary wasn't working. And technology oversight on educational resources, the process I think was a little new, so there were some issues with that, and staff recognition. Okay, next slide, if you could turn the slide, that'd be great. So for non-monetary classified, of course, they'd like to wear jeans, and the techs would like to work in jeans when they have to do things on the floor. They didn't like the summer lump pay. They would also like recognition for good work. Snow days for secretaries. That would be where secretaries would like to come in and get some things done. And then, so the new food program, people thought there was some waste and some issues with cleanup. That's what that was about. If you could, so for monetary, I think this is Brian, right? Is he here?
No, actually, that's you still.
Oh, okay. Sorry, it didn't have page numbers. So monetary certified for elementary, they wanted to bring back interns and a salary increase. Class size, of course, is always on the survey. Response time for work orders for technology and buildings and grounds. And secondary, salary mid-year movement for their degrees and national board certifications. Sub-rotation is always an issue in secondary. And they wanted us to look at pay for their unused sick time. So for monetary classified, salaries is high on the priorities, better equipment and facilities, training for food service, and training not during working hours. Again, the after-school food program, there was a lot of waste, trying to figure out the balance of how many students were going to take that home and then what they do with all the leftover. Flexible work hours and facilities and technology. And secretaries were definitely worried that they are not paid market value, but to address that, they're paid equal to other school districts, but school secretaries are not paid in a business market value. So there's two different things, two different pay scales for that.
Okay, so action's taken, and we just kind of briefly, we got to meet with Dr. Moore. We have a tendency to call the people in that we need to speak with when we're covering these survey items. So Dr. Moore was one we talked to. He was comfortable with discussing with his principals about the data review team times and also planning times. Staff may have beverages during the workday. Extra work days have been given. Well, actually, extra work days have been calendared at the beginning of the year. Meet the teacher and back to school nights cannot be combined, but others could, which would be fewer night activities. So they're looking at that as well. Block scheduling, middle schools will not have block scheduling in the 2021 school year. The sub pay has been increased, which should help with protecting plan time, and cleanliness in the buildings we're using contracted vendors with. As we continue on, technology oversight on educational resources. Next year, staff and students will be on different servers. Staff will have different filters. Staff will be able to fill out requests for software. As long as the instructional leadership team approves, they'll be approved. The district is exploring the restorative justice model in the 2021 school year to possibly replace the BIS model at the secondary level. The summer pay was addressed. The lump sum, this will continue. We know that it makes it easier on the financial department. The after-school meal program, parents can opt out. Making fewer meals would be the result. And then Amy already talked about the billing secretaries and snow days. Last year they had a lot more snow days. RAE team will continue to monitor this issue to see if it's still an issue next year. Monetary, elementary, we discussed the issue of returning interns to each elementary building. That's admin interns. At this time, there will be no change. RAE towns within the state recommended numbers for class size. The goal was to complete 90% of the work orders and repairs within the first 24 hours. Facility ops is working on reducing their completion rate while being grossly understaffed. Secondary, the sub pay was raised, and we hope this will help. Mid-year salary movement is just about impossible to do. It's going to remain the same. If you need to be, you'll have to submit it by September 1st, I believe, in order to be moved. Currently, employees may save up to 100 days of sick leave. Any days over 100 will be paid at 20% of the daily rate, and this will remain the same. Facility ops has been upgrading equipment throughout the year in all the buildings. Training issues in food service will continue to be looked at by RAE team next year. As I said before, the after-school meal program, parents can opt out. Flex time hours vary by department. Speak with your supervisor for clarification. And as Amy suggested before, secretaries are paid on par with other surrounding school districts, but not with corporate secretaries. Their range will remain the same. So we come to our recommendations for your guys' action. After analyzing the following data from the RAE team middle school block scheduling survey, RAE team sees evidence that supports the discontinuation of block scheduling at the middle school level. RAE team recommended discontinuing of block scheduling at the middle school for 2021 school year. However, the decision ultimately lies with ILT, and ILT has made a decision to discontinue middle school block scheduling. Recommendation for classified is to give them a step, and we're going to add 5 cents to the base, which will give each employee a 2% increase. We're going to rework the schedule and educate those people that will be on that schedule next year so the new structure can be effective for the 21-22 school year. Currently, for certified, we're recommending a step.
Yeah, Brian or someone else on the committee, before we go into other discussion, I want to start with my main issue. I was really hoping we were going to go to a new salary schedule this year. So tell me more about your discussions on that and how that did not happen.
Okay, so we looked into that extensively. We looked into it cell by cell for every single person. And there was quite a few places where it didn't make sense that people would be losing money. It was very hard to sell it to people also. We'd like to start doing money to the base. That was something we talked about. However, if we're not back in school to physically start telling people and explaining how money to the base helps things, it'd just be very hard to do. But we looked at that starting day one. Everybody had cell to cell matchup comparisons. Brian can talk about it a little bit more. We really thought we would see something very different than what actually came about when it came out.
Yeah, when you came in and challenged us to fix it, we were on it, and we dedicated many hours of research, and I don't even know how much time Steve and his people had reworking different salary schedules and making up different scenarios, but we spent a lot of time looking at it. And if like Amy suggested, if we continue with the current certified salary schedule and continue to add to the base, then it works out better for everyone at all levels.
All right. Well, I mean, it has to be something you guys are satisfied with, but I was hoping to get to something more simple and fair to everyone. But how does the 5 cents added to the base for classified? Where do we get 5 cents? That doesn't make.
So what we had really wanted to do was rework their salary schedule so that they all had a 2% increase every time. And we thought we were going to have enough time with our meeting schedule to get that done. Unfortunately, because of COVID, we were a little bit behind in our meeting schedule. So by the time we made the recommendation, it was not going to be possible for the HR department to redo the salary schedule, plug everybody in, and give them their step. So we have reworked a salary schedule that we submit for next year so that they would have enough time to do that. The 5 cents is just giving them an additional 1%, so that total they come off with 2% of a raise.
It's a 0.5%.
Yeah, sorry.
All right.
Currently, the classified schedule is set up where there's 1.5% between each range. So we want to increase that next year to 2% between each range. So the combination of giving them a step at 1.5% plus adding 5 cents to the base would equal that 2%. So this year, they're still getting that 2% increase next year, which is what we wanted, without having had the time to completely redo the schedule for HR.
And we do want to have the opportunity to be able to educate them, because there is a possibility that if you were on range 12 and at step 16 currently and placed on a new salary schedule, you could wind up range 12 and be at step 12. So that looks like you've lost, but you really haven't. And so that's the part we have to educate over.
I've got a question, a comment. I'm amazed at the detail that your command of details, both of you, in this area. Rate team does an outstanding job of communicating with each other, communicating with the administration, and I really commend you. And I love this document. I love it. It's fair. It's determined, yet it's flexible. But the only thing that I have, maybe it's the COVID issue, but the timing, we're talking about this in June. It's hard for me to put the discussion and the debate in perspective, because this is the first really that I've seen of the issues that you are working on the entire year, month by month. And I know I'm not asking that I know board members can go to these meetings, but I don't think that's the right thing. And certainly not the right thing for me, because I'd be asking too many questions. You wouldn't get enough stuff done. But the point is that I'd like the board be more involved in understanding the movement of these issues. Because I'm looking at step 2%. I don't know what the choice was. And I don't know how this puts us in a competitive position relative to our competition to retain the best people and to hire the best people. And I think that's a board goal. And I'm really having a hard time shaping this and seeing how it plugs in. So maybe what we need to do next year as a board is, it's our responsibility to sign off on this. And part of that responsibility is to listen and hear. But we need to be told a little bit more about what's going on, so that when this comes to us, we're already there. We've already shaped and sized it, and we can get comfortable real quickly with it. And
some of that.
I'm having a hard time doing that.
Okay, some of that, Rick, had to do with COVID, because we didn't know about the budget cuts, and there was a lot of things that we had a lot of this stuff sealed up in probably December. Came back in January, voted, and we're like, we're really good with this. But we have to wait for the financial statement, because all the members of Rate Team are very committed to make sure that we're making fiscally responsible decisions, and that what we can do, the school district can afford to do and continue to afford to do in the future. None of us want to jeopardize the finances. We want to be responsible. And so we have to wait until the last minute to look at that. So we knew what we wanted to do, but then we also in the same turn have to be fiscally responsible with all the other things that are going to take up money right now.
That's a great
And I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
That's why Rate Team is so great, because collaboration through this model is better than anything else that could be done.
And I think if you want, we could set up a meeting where we could actually educate you on salary schedules that wouldn't take 3 days. But I think we could cover it pretty much in a half an hour. Steve's very, very good at it. I learned it the hard way because I had to, I guess. But it's
Mr. Cody's right. We need to have a little bit more discussion and see some more numbers on some of these. And I think we will, Dr. Sheldon, at our finance team meeting and at our budget meeting, because I want to know how much this is actually going to cost us. And you know, the board may want to add some money to the certified base at this time. But that'll be
another point I would add to that is that in reviewing the budget document, I've learned that in hiring new teachers, the compensation level, Raytown is 11th out of our 12 schools in our geographical area. We're 11 out of 12. And one of our missions, firm board goals, is increase minority hiring. And we're told it's a struggle, but everybody's got to struggle because everybody's needing to hire minority teachers for obvious reasons. And so what I don't see here is that issue. Are we tripping over ourselves in not being able to hire minority teachers because we're 11th out of 12 in the geographical area and starting comp? And was that an issue that maybe you guys kicked around?
That's an issue that we look at every time. That's one of the first meetings. We want to know where we are on just about everybody's salary. Where are we on line cooks? Where are we at this? We don't want to be 11 out of 12. That doesn't feel good to us. What we really would like to have done is add a whole bunch of money to the base and not do a step. But there's a problem with that. Anytime you don't do a step, your teachers have a psychological feeling that they didn't get a raise or that they were frozen. And so the other thing we didn't want to do is worry people and think, oh, we got money to the base, but we didn't get a step. Something's wrong in Raytown. That wasn't the image we wanted to project. So we were very mindful in what we wanted to do and what we were trying to do to make people feel good and still meet our goal. Because we would love to be higher up and have that money to the base. In order for us to do that, Ray Team would have had to been in school, going school to school and talking to people and educating them on, hey, this money to the base is actually a win-win for you. You know, it's a good thing, but people are still stuck in that mindset of, I want to be on step 12 next year because I'm step 11 this year. They're not looking at what's the end game. What am I taking home? So that's something
why I
that
wanted
we
to
have
move
to
to the
work
new
on.
salary schedule.
Mr. Moore,
Mr. Landers.
To carry this just a little further, and to what Andy's talking about, I would like the board to consider maybe they've got the step that the certified people want. Let's see what it would be to add 250 to the base along with the step and see what that might do for them and what it might cost the district. But I would like the board to consider doing that along with what they've asked for.
Dr. Sheldon, were we going to have a discussion about some different numbers at our finance committee meeting?
Well, I believe we will have those discussions about the preliminary budget and the decision based on the decision that the board makes. I believe Ray Team and, to be honest with the administration, would like for the board to make a decision tonight. So let me first address
I want to consider what Mr. Landers just said, and we need to know how much that's going to cost.
Yep. So let me give that to you. I've got that ready. So currently, what Ray Team is requesting will cost the district $1.5 million, and that's that nickel to the classified base and a step, and then a step for teachers. In addition to that, we have $1 million increase to health insurance, and then about $150,000 increase to the retirement on that. So all in all, between the step and the nickel increase to the classified base and the health insurance increase, that's about a $2.6 million increase to salary and benefits. It's about $160,000 per $100 to the base. So if the board decides to put $250 on the base, that's an additional $400,000. So the total price tag to add a nickel to the classified base and a step, and then $250 to the base of the certified staff and a step, and then the health insurance increase would be about $3 million to salary and benefits. Now, what will that do to our balances? That's always an important question. We are anticipating ending this year with 21.7% in balances. That's 23.2 million. So if we were to take 3 million off of that, if we did what Mr. Landers had suggested, that would take our balances down to about 23 million, 23.3 million, and leave us around about 18.5% in our balances, in our operating balances. And I believe that's very doable for us for fiscal year 21.
Where does that put us on the rankings? If we had
So adding $250 to the base will not take us from 11th to 10th even. We are at one time when we were talking, we would have to add $1,500 to the base to get to about the 5th or 6th ranking. So as we were discussing, as Amy and Brian and Susie had indicated, you know, we spent a lot of time looking at different scenarios for our salary schedule. One was $1,000 to the base, one was $1,500 to the base, one was a $2,000 addition to the base, and then completely restructuring the salary schedule so that every step was a 2% increase. To do that, it was going to be 2.2, 2.3, 2.4 million in addition to the $1 million for health insurance. So at that point, we were getting into the 3.5, 3.6, 3.3 range for an increase.
But the only way to move us up in the rankings, which is one of our specific board goals, is by adding money to the base.
Exactly. And our plan at the time, as Susie and Amy and Brian indicated, we were prepared to come to the April board meeting with that recommendation to have you approve those new salary schedules with a certain dollar amount to the base. We hadn't decided if it was going to be 1,000 or 2,000, and then the restructure. But once the closure occurred, we felt like it was fiscally responsible to pause that discussion until we had a better understanding of our fiscal condition.
Mr. Moore, one thing I'd like to add with the certified salary schedule is that through our research, we found that the current salary schedule, keeping it actually was better. One, because with the 1.5% between each step, that every year we give a step, that's the equity, everyone gets the 1.5% raise. Adding money to the base, as it trickles up through the salary schedule, gives a kind of natural longevity stipend, longevity increase to people who are higher up and over on these on the salary schedule. And I think the conclusion that we came to was keeping the current schedule, and every year, if financially able to give a step and adding to the base every year, is actually the best in that current salary schedule. But given the fact this year that there's the state income with sales tax and casinos, and now the elementary and secondary is going to get cut by millions, we wanted to just make sure that everybody got a step, and we would continue and work next year to see the best solution for that.
So
where does our salary schedule rank at the higher level, the BS plus or the master's degree, MS plus 16, MS plus 32? Where do we rank as far as districts at the top versus where we rank at the bottom?
Go ahead, Steve.
It's been a while since I looked at that, but if we do compare a little bit better at the middle and the top, more of the mid-range than at the starting salary schedule.
Yeah. Just to kind of clarify what Susie said, we discussed quite a bit of going to equal percentage steps on the new salary, which I think is what Mr. Moore was referring to. And after many, many hours of discussion, they decided that they preferred the current structure that we have right now, because the way it is now, if you've been with our district longer, you get a higher percentage raise. The cells are situated so it rewards staying in the district. So that's why we kept with the current salary. Ideally, we would have liked to have given a step and added, as Steve said, money to the base. We decided, I mean, the group decided, Ray team decided, that they would go ahead and do the step and then hopefully be able to put money on the base next year. Or perhaps, you know, even if the board, you know, if Steve said, you know, we could do it this summer, put a little bit on. So that's kind of where it was. They are concerned about starting salary. So we are continuing to look at that.
So with the proposal as presented, it'll end up being a 2% raise for classified employees. What percentage of a raise is it for certified?
So that's part of the.
Depends.
Yeah, it just depends. It's part of the discussion with Ray team about our current salary schedule. A teacher new to our district who's on column 1, step 1, when they get a step, it's a 3% increase. A veteran teacher at the very other end of the spectrum, it's about a 1.57% increase, 1.52% increase when they get a step. And that's just, and then it's a range.
Ellis just said the higher ranges were a bigger percentage increase.
When you add money to the base, it helps them in a dollar amount more because of the way it trickles through the salary schedule. So if you were to add a certain dollar amount to the base, let's say 3% to the base, that would trickle through to 3% to the base, 3.5, 4, it'd be 4.5 or 5% on a $70,000 salary amount, as opposed to 3% or 6%.
So what is the average percent increase for certified?
So if you look at right at the middle of the scale, it's about 2.5%.
And what would it be with adding $250 to the base?
So $250 to the base, it's a very small percentage. Just give me a second here. So it's not even 0.5% to the base. So it's a small dollar, it's a small percentage, and that percentage then trickles throughout the rest of the salary schedule.
Well, I'll let other people see if they have any questions or comments, but is there some reason why we need to vote on this tonight as opposed to on the 29th at our next special meeting?
Well, depending on what the decision of the board is, we need to generate contracts for staff members. Now, for our teaching staff, we have time to do that. And for our classified staff who are non-12 month, our 12-month employees is where the quick turnaround time comes. And so if this is approved on the 29th, it only gives us a couple of days to make the adjustments in the salary schedule, move everybody, generate those contracts and letters of appointment for our 12-month staff and get them out the door.
Other questions or comments?
I have a comment.
Tittle.
And I agree what Amy Smith said about the certified staff usually wants that step. If they had to choose, they would probably choose the step because you don't want to be left down. It's like she said, it's like you were frozen. I'd like to add to the base too. I'd like to add more than $250, but I think that would be a good start. But can we go back to, I don't know if it was Brian, on actions taken for monetary under certified, and in secondary it says sub pay was raised. and hope this will help. Are you talking about, is this about teachers who use their plan time to sub?
I believe so, and this was done prior. The rate team survey comes out pretty early on in the year, so this was done prior to the sub pay increasing. And subbing is always an issue. I mean, it's just something that comes up. Prior to COVID economy, so it's a little bit harder to get people to do the subbing job. So it's something.
But you're talking about subbing for the day, and you're talking about teachers who get paid when they lose their plan time to go sub for somebody.
Correct. That's mostly what the problem was, is that people have to, in secondary, people have to take their plan time, or in elementary, you're splitting classes.
Right. Well, and it has come up in elementary that some of those teachers were not, I don't know if that's still an issue with NEA, but it was an issue that some of those teachers were not getting paid to take their plan time to sub like the secondary people were. But
that was that was not one of the issues. That was not what was on the survey about getting paid. It was just about participating and taking your plan time to sub.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And then also on the mid-year salary movement, are you saying then that there is only one time at the first of the year in September when a person can move on the salary schedule?
That's correct, because you sign your contract once a year. So you're going to sign,
right.
You have that one date, and then you move forward from there.
But Steve Shelton, it used to be different. For a while, it was you could change every month, and that was pretty excessive. But for many years, it was in September and January, because sometimes people finish their degrees or classes, in December. But right now, it's only one time.
Correct, and it's been that way for a number of years. Initially,
several years, yeah.
That staff are required to turn in their transcript and verification of their degree by September 1st, and so we can amend their contract from there.
Well, I think it'd be, I would like to see Ray Team next year asking again to have that added in January too, but that's not something that you asked for. But let's go back then to the elementary non-monetary certified meet the teacher and back to school nights. Are those the same? Can't those be the same thing?
Actually, if Dr. Moore is here, if he could explain it, he explained it to us really well. Dr. Moore, explain that to her, why we can't combine those.
Yes. Yeah, I can explain. The reason why we can't combine them is one, curriculum night, back to school night basically is an opportunity for parents to come to the school to learn about the curriculum and to learn about what the kids going to be taught that year. Meet the Teacher night is basically just that. It's very informal. It's really just for parents to come up and find out what class their students in. And so we understood, and it's more informal, almost like.
It's hard to hear him.
Can you hear me now?
No, not very well.
Okay.
Tony, your microphone's cutting out like it does sometimes.
You know what? She has to.
There we go.
Okay. Yeah, I think she had to make me a panel member. Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. And I'll get it close to the microphone. Is that a little better?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. So make sure I got it straight. You're saying why we can't combine Meet the Teacher night and curriculum night together? Is that it?
Well, not exactly. My question is Meet the Teacher is the one they have like during work week, where you go and take your supplies and meet your teacher. But back to school night comes later in the year, right?
That is correct. Normally about a couple of weeks into the school year. Yeah. And because another thing, Meet the Teacher night, be honest with you, we never have had 100% of our students there at Meet the Teacher night and parents. We have parents, for whatever reason, some of it has to do with some of the issues maybe and so forth, and even some of our transient parents don't really get enrolled in school sometime.
Right.
After school. So back to school night, we try to catch everybody. And that's more formal, where they do classroom presentations and talk about the curriculum. Sometimes they do it by grade level, sometimes they do it by teacher, talk about the teachers' planning time, things of that nature. Whereas Meet the Teacher night, there are no formal presentations. They just come to the school, school supply.
Right.
So it's impossible to try to have back to school night on the first, that is just be too hectic. It's not possible.
So you're saying some schools were maybe considering doing that, but that's not something that's going to work.
Yes, they asked that question. But what we did do, we went to all the principals and told them to talk to their teachers. We did create a standard of a minimum number of night meetings that they can have to create some sense of recognize that our teachers have families too, and principals do too. So to limit as many of those, some of that had to do with working with the PTA, because and I told them to put the teachers on a rotation and do not require teachers to attend all PTA events, but let them, select some they would choose during the year.
Right.
And then like curriculum nights, some schools, we give them the option of doing math and ELA curriculum night on the same night versus one in the spring and one in the fall. So we've created some opportunities for them to try to streamline the amount of time, evenings that teachers have to come back at night. Stay at night.
And about the plan time for elementary. So it's going to be encouraged, I assume, then, that they would just have the data review teams one day a week.
1 day a week. Yeah, that's required pretty much. And those other 4 days, teachers have their own plan time, because we also have Wednesday afternoons. We do a lot of DRT as well.
But had it gotten kind of away from that in some buildings where they were having more meetings during plan time?
So yes. Amy, it was looking like teachers had 2 days a week that they would be doing DRT. They would have care team meetings, and possibly even another one. So anywhere from 3 to 4 days a week were taken up for meetings.
Yeah. So this is good. I'm glad to see this, that if it really is encouraged. And the staff the beverage thing is like a pebble in your shoe. On paper it doesn't seem like a big thing, but it's huge.
It is.
And I didn't realize that we had gotten away from where people could have water or coffee or a Pepsi on their desk.
That was an isolated incident, really, at one school, and we took care of that problem, and we worked it out. And principals understand that teachers can have coffee or pop or something. They understand that.
Good, because those are the things that get you down.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
When somebody, that's important to be able to make those decisions. Okay, I think that was my only question, but I really am happy to see the middle school block scheduling go, and I'm also glad to see that secondary is going to look at a different model, the social justice, restorative justice, and instead of BIST. I think BIST, I think secondary knows what will work for their kids. So I'm glad they're looking at something else if BIST isn't working for them.
Dr. Markley?
Thank you.
Dr. Markley? Dr. Markley, are you there?
You're on mute.
I am here.
So the hour is late. What would you like us to do? Do you want a motion tonight, or do you want to wait till the finance committee? Because I think we got everybody in the room.
Well, go ahead, Mr. Burton.
I had a question, but go ahead. You can go ahead and finish.
Well, let me hear your question first. It may shape my response.
Well, it was more, I guess, directed to Steve. What is that account that you said if we went with the current proposal and the salary schedule, we would have $23 million left? What's the account that's in?
the operating budget of Fund 1 and Fund 2. So, we have 4 funds. Fund 1, Fund 2 make up the operating budget. Fund 3 is our debt service, and Fund 4 is capital.
Right.
So, if we accept the proposal as presented, we will end next year with 21.1 million or 18.8% reserves. If we take Mr. Lander's recommendation, you can take $400,000 off of that. And so, it's going to end up around, 19.2 rather than the 21.1.
What is the target? I mean, what is the
the board has a floor of 15% in reserves and likes to maintain right around 20%. So that 15 to 20% range, currently we are scheduled to be in the year just above that at 21.7. And either scenario, the one that's presented, or if we add $250 to the base, as Mr. Landers has suggested, would keep us in that 15 to 20% range.
Okay.
I'm not comfortable voting on these without seeing those numbers in front of me. We always have the numbers. I know we were going to have finance committee meeting tonight. We're going to do it next week instead. But I want to see the numbers. You guys know I'm in favor of getting an increase, but I just not comfortable. I'm not going to stand in the way of the vote of the will of the board, but I'd rather see the numbers laid out in front of me.
Can you let me share my screen, Rachel?
Vance, while I'm thinking,
I'd rather move on.
Tony asked me a question. To respond to Mr. Tody's question, it would help us on this end if we could go with Ray Team's recommendation of the step and Mr. Lander's $250 to the base. We can afford it. It's a show of good faith from the work that they've done all year, because they backed off. We looked at adding quite a bit of money, as you heard earlier, to the base, and that was prior to the situation that we're in now. And the situation has changed, and it's changed, and it may change again after the first of the year. But we think we're in a position to afford what has been presented tonight, and that's what we would like this board to go ahead and approve. We fall within those guidelines of where the board wants us to be in our budget surplus, and it also verifies and validates the work that Ray Team has done.
If you like what you have in front of you on your screen, if you look at the turquoise color, that is what we're estimated actual revenues and expenditures are to be for. You can see in the red, row 19, that we will end the year with 23.2 million or 21.7% reserves. What's reflected in the 2021 column reflects the Ray Team recommendation. And you can see as you go down, that's a 21.1, 21.2 balance, and 18.8 in reserves.
And this takes into account the expected budget hits that we're going to take from the state that were identified earlier this week or earlier last week.
Well, it takes into account how those affect FY20. There have been no announced withholdings from 21 at this point. The governor has not released that, and he indicated in a call that he would release that. Hopefully, well, he would release it as sooner rather than later, as soon as those it became evident as to what he needed to do. Hopefully, he said as early as July, but it could come later in the fiscal year.
What's your range of estimate? Can you venture a guess for us?
The people that I've talked to anticipate the state running short between $50 and $100 million, which for us would be a reduction well, they've already told us that they're not going to give us any additional transportation funds. So that would probably be a reduction of, 1.5 million from the formula if they reduced it by that, it's at $75 million. If they're short $75 million and they withhold, that would probably be about a $1.5 million reduction to our state revenue.
Which would affect these numbers, the 2021.
Well, that definitely would affect these numbers, yes.
That'd be a 1.5 would be a 1%-ish hit, something like that.
Probably, yeah. So that would take us maybe down to 17 and a half, 17%.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I've got enough numbers here in my head that would tell me we can afford it. The risk is that the state numbers are worse than you just projected, although it's best. I mean, it's what you could do with what you have available. But I think that the other thing is the starting pay. It's a can that gets kicked down the road, and I think we need to recognize that we have an obligation there. So I like Dr. Markley's opinion, and Rick, I like yours, but I think we got enough here to say, yeah, we can afford it. And we're going to make, this next year, going to be tough. Our people are going to, we worked hard. We're going to really work hard. And the working hard is uncertainty, a lot of uncertainty. We're going to make it up as we go along. And so I'm willing to make the investment, particularly because I think these rate team people are really good, and I think they know what they're talking about.
You make the recommendation, Rick, and I'll second it.
Well, can I have a question in there?
Sure.
So what is wrong with what Ray team recommended? Why are we wanting to change it?
I would like to see a token good faith raise to the bottom of the salary schedule, along with the step to, as if nothing else, to appreciate what the rate team's trying to do, and then show our teachers that we're trying to do the best we can for you. We don't have unlimited funds, but we think, from what Steve said and what Dr. Markley said, that we can afford this. So in good faith, this is what we want to do. Thank you.
I'm in agreement for appreciation and recognition, but my concern has to do with what happens to us if for some reason next year comes around and we're hit with some financial challenges. I mean, you can't retract what you've given, so.
So as in a year, you have options on how to reduce expenditures. That is the one area in our budget that we have a great deal of control over. And so at that point, as we have done in the past, we would come to the board with proposed ways to control our spending.
What does that equal to in percentage, Dr. Shelton?
Can you give me?
The motion that is before us now to add an additional $250 to the base of all certified staff. So
that's a half a percent. So it is
a half a percent.
Yeah, well, no, it's not even that. It's half of a half. It's not even a 1/4%. So
okay, I'm sorry. What is the total percentage that we would be given to certified staff?
So they would get a step. So as we talked about on the salary schedule, we would give them a step, and that ranges from a new teacher getting 3% and an experienced teacher getting 1.5% plus whatever we add to the base, which would be just a small percentage of an increase.
When the base or the new teacher, the beginning teacher is something's added to, when money is added to that position, some more goes on up through the salary schedule, right, Steve?
Yes. So just to give you a simple,
not much, but yeah.
1% of 37,000 is less than 1% of 70,000. So if someone's
Right.
making 70,000, 1% means more to them than 1% of a brand new teacher.
Same amount of money, just not the same percentage.
No, it's a different amount. It's a different amount.
No.
It's the same amount of $250 is to everybody.
No.
That's why the salary schedule is so confusing. It's not the same, and it's hard to understand.
What does the beginning teacher make now on our salary schedule, Steve?
37,000. So if we add 250 to the base, a brand new teacher would make 37,250. A person at the top of the scale would get a percent increase that's equivalent to a brand new teacher. So that 250 might be 500 to that teacher making 70,000.
Yeah, it's not everybody getting $250. No, it's just the base.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah. The new teacher salary.
Everything above the base, which was what we want to do.
Which would,
I just don't think we have enough information and understanding in front of us right now.
It also makes it
That was the case, man. If everybody did get the same amount, that would lower the percentage up the top. And it would also increase the bottom, which seems to be our problem. That our beginning teachers, our new hires, we can't, those are the ones that are 11 out of 12.
Right.
Which makes Amy Lowe Smith's point of adding, rather than the step, adding the salary increase to the base. And it would benefit those beginning teachers, and it'd benefit people at the top of the schedule as well.
It would benefit everybody, but psychologically, they don't want to go along with that. And that's what we're fighting against years and years.
That's
but
right.
Sometimes
so we're not doing what's right because of psychological reasons not to.
Well, Ray Team was ready to fight that fight. However, if we're not there to go to every building and explain the issue to people, it makes it very hard. If we're just doing it over, an internet or an email, which doesn't come across very well. So if we did that in the future, we would need to go building by building and explain it to people and talk about that and educate people. Part of the problem is not being educated in this. So we would have loved to do that. We didn't have that opportunity.
Well, I understand you guys put in a lot of time and effort, so I'm not.
I wouldn't want it either.
No, it was disappointing for us. I feel like we had different hopes and different plans, but when it came down to the numbers and what we looked at, what we thought was going to happen just wasn't what happened. So I do apologize. I know it's frustrating that that the increase is different. We wanted it to be different, but couldn't find a way to make it work and be equitable for all.
So Terry wants to do 250 to the base plus the 5, and then the Ray Team wants to do the 5% or the 5%, and then the step.
Alonzo,
Terry do all 3.
The motion would be, I move that the board approve the Ray Team recommendations and additional 250 to the base of all certified staff. So that would take the classified with the 5-cent increase and the whatever. I forgot all the numbers there, but it would take what they've recommended. The only difference would be we're going to add 250 to the base for the certified staff. That would be the recommendation.
I second the motion.
I make that motion.
I second it.
Bobby did.
So there's a motion. Mr. Landers and Mr. Toady made the second. Any other questions?
Ready to vote.
No other questions? All right, Mr. Landers?
Yes.
Ms. Salisbury?
Yes.
Mr. Burton?
Yes.
Mr. Toady?
Yes.
Ms. Tittle?
Yes.
Ms. Plank?
Yes.
And I vote yes. All right.
Thank you, Ray Team.
Steve, Dr. Sheldon, I still want to see all those numbers laid out and specific about what we just did. So let's have that at Finance Committee meeting next week.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Board goals. Let's not discuss anything about this tonight. We have a while to work on those. We just passed new board goals, so I don't foresee a lot of changes in these. But the administration, we can have a discussion over the next few weeks about if we want to make any changes to board goals. Any questions or comments right now? All right. All right. Amendments, budget amendments. This was the item we moved from the consent agenda. So there needs to be a motion to approve the budget amendments as presented.
Well, I would, I'd like to speak to this issue if I might, and
Well,
then
we need to have a motion first.
yeah, I move that we table. I move that we table this issue until our June 29th is our last meeting of the board. Is that correct? I move that we table this issue until the June 29th meeting.
Is there a motion? Is there a second to the motion to table?
Second.
All right.
Question.
That's fine with me to table. Mr. Landers.
If we table this until the 29th, Steve, is that going to do anything for your what you need to do and get covered?
I'm going to need to work with Dr. Markley and Mr. Moore to inform the board of some capital expenditures that need to be approved through resolution prior to paying those. So anyway, that's the operational issue with tabling this, but once again, we can work through those details.
No financial issue.
Well, as we currently set, we're in compliance, all funds, Fund 1, 2, and 3, we're in compliance, statutory compliance. And Fund 4, we're out of compliance. This amendment would bring us back into compliance and allow us to pay those capital expenditures moving forward. But once again, this is our last week to actually process checks or process invoices. So it will depend on what comes in this week. If we don't get any capital invoices to pay, then we're no different than where we sit right now. If we get some additional capital expenditures this week, I'll need to have a conversation with Dr. Markley and Dr. Moore on how to proceed.
And the reason we're out of compliance on Fund 4 is we approved those bond projects back in November, and they're approved to get started after the summer, and we would not receive invoices for those payments until after July 1. But when we were shut down on, I think, April the 9th, and shut down for good for the end of the year, we told the contractors to go ahead and get started on those jobs to get a jump start. And that's why we are out of compliance, because we've been paying on those as we've been moving forward, as they've been doing the work.
Well, I'm the one that made the motion, and I might make a comment. I know it's late, but this document, this PDF, is 96 pages long, and it contains enormous amount of minutia, small dollars, but also contains some significant amounts of money that are being proposed to move from a fund to a fund or to an account to account. And if we follow our policies, many of those decisions need to be made in the form of a resolution. For example, what Dr. Shelton is recommending, we will have spent more our budget in Fund 4, and according to policy, we can't do that without a formal board resolution. That's right out of the book. Now, I think when we get into these troublesome financial issues, that we've got to follow the policy, or we're subject to some statute issues in the Missouri state law. And so I think we can get through this. We may need an emergency meeting that's 15 minutes to ratify the resolution, but it's not like we simply can drive by this issue without getting into the details. And that's why I think we need to step back and do the right thing and follow the policy.
Well, then let's don't table it, and let's dig into it right now.
You got a 96
Well, there is a motion to take, there is a motion to table, so we need to vote on that motion. All right, voting on the motion to table. Mr. Landers,
No.
Ms. Salisbury,
Sorry, motion to table it, not to table it, which is it?
motion to table. That was the motion.
So-
Table until our June 29th meeting.
Okay, Mr. Moore, I am not able to vote just yet because I'm mixed up now because do we want to discuss it so that Dr. Shelton can move forward, or do we want to table it and put them in a predicament? I mean, I'm a little bit.
We can discuss the motion further if the motion that's on the floor is withdrawn and then someone makes a motion to approve the budget amendments. Then we can have the discussion right now.
Okay. I vote no, even though I second the motion.
All right. Mr. Burton,
Yes.
Mr. Toady,
Yes.
Ms. Tittle,
No.
Ms. Plank.
No.
I vote yes. The motion fails. Motion to table fails. So is there a motion to approve the budget amendments as presented?
Mr. President, I move that we, no, this is the wrong one. I move the budget as presented.
The budget amendments. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, there's a motion to approve the budget amendments. All right, now we will have a discussion on these and hopefully answer the questions that are out there.
Yeah, I'd be happy to start the discussion.
Go ahead.
As I said earlier, there's 96 pages of adjustments between accounts, but there's also some adjustments between funds. And board policy says that we have to ratify by motion transfers between funds. That's our budget practice. Now, to simply pass this motion is not ratifying all of the transfers that are made, and it's certainly not understanding them. And it also is as I've read this afternoon in Missouri statutes. Missouri statutes say you got to follow your policy, and we're not doing that. Now, if you want to vote yes, you're voting to not follow the policy, and you're voting to not follow state statutes. There's a very descriptive way of doing this, and I understand that Dr. Shelton's got some timelines, but I didn't present the 96-page PDF. And I think we need to do this stuff the right way, and we got time to do it. Otherwise, we become a rubber stamp organization, not following its policies as set forth by this board. And I don't think that's the right way to conduct business.
Well, we normally do vote when we transfer between funds. So Dr. Shelton, what is the difference now between this document and when we do vote to transfer funds between accounts?
This is following the same practice and procedures that we've followed for a number of years, as long as I've been here. So I don't know what's different. And I got, Shelley is on in the meeting, and she can give us a legal opinion on whether this follows state statute or not. But this is following the same process we followed in the past. I will tell you, and to Mr. Tody's point, it is a much larger document than normal. So when the closure occurred, we sat down and we went, knowing that a closure like this for 2.5 months would have a huge impact on our expenditures and on our revenue. And so we went through line by line, code by code, to determine what expenditures needed to be revised up or revised down, what revenues needed to be revised up and revised down. And we have thousands of account codes, and that's resulted in this 96-page document. As I mentioned earlier, we are in compliance in Fund 1, Fund 2, and Fund 3. Fund 4, as Dr. Markley indicated, and I've shared, we're out of compliance, and we're out of compliance performing approved and authorized projects that started earlier than we normally start them. So this budget amendment, in the biggest part, is a $6.5 million increase to the Fund 4 budget, which would allow us to continue to bring us in compliance and also pay for the bond projects through June 30th and probably throughout most of the beginning of next year. So Shelley, can you chime in and give us an opinion on if approval of this amendment meets the statutory expectations?
Well, I can tell you that the closure issues have wreaked havoc on everybody's budgets. And I don't know the details of what the expenditures are, but I can tell you that getting a jump on summer construction projects has been a common theme in school districts across the state and actually nationwide. In order to bring yourself into compliance, I've heard multiple terms used. I heard resolution, I heard a motion, just to provide a little bit of legal clarification there. There is a bit of a more formality when you are increasing your previously approved budgeted amount for a particular fund. So in this case, Fund 4. So in order to technically meet that requirement, you do need to include in the language, in the minutes, and in the language of the motion, the specific factual basis or the reasons for that increased amount. And actually, when we started the conversation on this agenda item, Dr. Markley, I think, kind of provided the rationale for what you were doing and why the expenditures hit sooner than what you had originally budgeted for. So that basis is sufficient for it, but you do need to include that in the motion and state it in the minutes. The actual expenditures themselves, that's just to amend the budget. The expenditures themselves will be separate action by the board, which is sufficient just by your ordinary motion for any expenditure, and you typically wrap those up in your consent agenda anyway. I don't know if that answers your question, but.
Well, I think that Dr. Shelton's sense of urgency is, if I may not be mistaken, your sense of urgency is on, as Shelley described, the fact that we have overspent expenditures in Fund 4. And we will continue to overspend them because of the construction issues that you're dealing with. And I would prefer to see as a compromise that we amend this motion to set forth what you need to get your money to those construction contractors, and then move the rest of the 96-page analysis to the Finance Committee, and we can then go through this policy and decide whether that resolution is consistent with policy and state law or not. Now we can do that. We can amend this motion and satisfy the Fund 4 issue. That's the issue that you're most troubled with. Is that right, Steve?
Yes, sir.
So I'm asking, I guess, I don't know, Terry, there's been a motion to not table. So I would make a motion I move that give me the word, Steve, what you need to get that approved.
On the floor,
Yeah.
Let's just see if Terry is open to a friendly amendment to his motion the way you stated it. And we will include the language that Shelley is asking us to include for the basis of why we need to approve this to rectify Fund 4.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think you need to include in there, correct me, Dr. Shelton or Dr. Markley, if I'm not understanding correctly, but it's not an increased, it's not just an isolated increase in expenditures. They were contemplated expenditures that moved timing wise into a different fiscal year. Is that?
That's correct. So these projects were approved and authorized at the November, December, and February board meetings. And so the expenditures were planned and approved. It's, as Dr. Markley indicated, it's just timing. We started in April rather than at the end of May.
I think that gets us caught up with our policy if we do that. Even though we didn't have formal authorization to spend more money, now we get caught up. Is that correct, Dr. Shelton?
Yes, sir. And so if
But I think Shelley's also saying we are okay legally because we did specifically approve all those expenditures. Is that right, Shelley?
That's what I'm hearing. These were not new, novel COVID-related expenses. These were planned expenses that had already been authorized by the board, but the timing shifted from one budgeting period to another. And
So
Rachel, just get with me tomorrow on the language that needs to go in the minutes, and I'll help you with that.
Okay. So since we've already actually approved all the expenditures, we are basically okay to approve the amendments because of just a shift in the timeline.
We approved the budget. Now we're going to approve the expenditures. Part of it's a month late, and now we're caught up.
Right. That's right.
All right. There's a motion as amended. We'll work to get that language straightened up. But it's basically rectifying the issues of the Fund 4 imbalance. Who made the second on that?
Beth?
Beth. Sure, I'll make it.
Any final questions or comments?
I want to say thank you for your patience and understanding.
Yeah, and we can have further discussion at our next two meetings, Finance Committee and June 29th meeting.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Landers.
Yes.
Ms. Salisbury.
Yes.
Mr. Burton.
Yes.
Mr. Tody.
Yes.
Ms. Tittle.
Yes.
Ms. Plank.
Yes.
And I vote yes. The motion passes. All right. I think that was it. I think that's it. Yes. Who will do the honor of making the motion to adjourn?
Mr. President, I move that the board adjourn the regular Board of Education meeting at 9:43 p.m. Very late meeting.
All right. And a second.
Second.
Questions?
All in favor? What?
Aye.
No, I got some questions.
Hold them, table them.
We approved a pizza thing earlier. It never was delivered.
Right
Now
now.
let's take a vote.
All in favor of the motion to adjourn, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thank you.
Good night.
Night.
Night.